All right, going live, going live, going live. Let's make sure that all the audio is working beautifully. That there's no issues amongst the many that could easily crop up. All right, there we go. Audio is coming through nice and good. Well, good evening, good day, wherever you guys are at. Hope that you are having a fantastic time. And I am really looking forward I'm really looking forward to our discussions, our topics, and everything tonight. Also, because I am finally publishing a book. Aha! I mean, I've already published multiple books, but this book should have actually come out months ago. But you know what? My loss will be your guys' gain tonight. So woohoo! Art says no technical issues. Impossible. Inconceivable. I'm Omega says bonjour. 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 Art says, hey. Then Tygoon says, have you heard Murder Drones is getting a comic adaptation? Yes, I have. I have seen the announcement, and that is absolutely grand. And Jake Branch says, hi, hear from your cruisy stuff. Awesome. And yes, I know I've been getting people saying, Lars, where's the cruisy stuff? Yes, it is coming. Believe you me. Actually, last night I spent some time playing through one of the mini games that I missed in my initial playthrough, which was the Susie Zilla mini game. And man, that was fun. That was fun. Is there anything cruisy about that particular game? No, not really. But it was one of those things that seeing Ralsei and Chris help Susie live her dream of getting to be Susie Zilla is just so heartwarming. Like the game really doesn't do anything for the overall story other than just simply be this heartwarming moments that goes to show how strong this friendship is between them all. And it's just it's the follow through with multiple things that we got in chapter 2 about Susie Zilla. Art says the Susie Zilla was my only disappointment. To be honest, I want to see Kaiju Susie. I would love to have seen Kaiju Susie as well. The reason why there's no Kaiju Susie is because Tenna was working on a budget. I mean, there's a lot that there's a lot going on with all of his games and everything. You're like, oh wow, no, this is absolutely on a budget. When you go for the secret boss route in chapter 3 and you get to see what it's like when you're an S tier ranked individual, yeah, everything behind the scenes is just absolute garbage. I'm like, you know what? That's actually pretty on point for what production is like behind the scenes. And if it's falling apart and everything, then you know that the money's not there for a cool production like Susie Zilla. Unfortunately. Oh man. But one of the things I've wanted to do as far as the cruisy material goes for chapters 3 and 4 is, as opposed to what I did with chapters 1 and 2, where I was very much focused on, okay, so here's all the evidence for cruisy being very viable, because at the time of chapter 1, like, I mean, there was plenty of shipping here and there and everything, like, because it's just what happens when fans get really excited. We start wanting fictional characters to get together in relationships that make us happy and that we hope would make them happy. I think for chapter 1, the big ships that I can recall right after chapter 1 released was Chris and Ralsei and Susie and Ralsei. Those were the big ones. And so like shipping Chris and Susie was kind of like oh, you're wandering into dangerous territory there, boy. And then after chapter 2 released, everyone was talking about Susie and Noelle, because it was no longer just Noelle crushing on Susie from afar, but they had shared moments together. And the way that everything seemed to be set up within chapter 2, it's like, hey, this is the endgame ship. And yet, as I played further through chapter 2, there was just all of these little clues. I'm like, wait a second. It seems like these two could get together. But against the quote unquote overwhelming evidence of Noelle and Susie getting together, then that really talking about Cruzy from a theorist's perspective and from a writing perspective mostly had to do with, okay, so where's the details, where's the clues? But now that we've gotten 2 more chapters with plenty more Cruzy material, it's not so much anymore about looking for the clues and looking for the moments, but rather bringing it all together to say what is being told here? What is the story aspect that Toby is doing potentially with this ship? And that's what that video will have to be. And that's why, again, I'm playing through the game all over again to really get a feel for what this relationship means for the story in the moment and then potentially going forward. And I want that to be more than just I theorize this, but rather say very concretely, this is the writing. This is what Toby has very obviously done. What does that mean now? And so that takes honestly more work than just simply cranking out a theory. As much as theories are fun and they do carry a lot of work and weight in themselves, it is different to say, okay, we're going just beyond pontificating random stuff, doing the whole MatPat thing, cranking out a video a week. No, we want to now talk about the story itself. That's the heart. Art says, and then Toby dropped that bomb with the chin. Yeah, the chin. resting her. We always got Jaru for long theory videos. Yes. I don't always agree with Jaru. In fact, actually, I find myself with the videos I've seen from him disagreeing with him more often than not. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to make Camille's Harem let's respond to this guy kind of a channel. Because we want to do our own things. In any case, yeah, no, the whole resting, Susie resting her chin on Chris's head. Oh yeah. Yep. And when people are like, "Oh, this is just friends," I'm like, I have been around just friends all my life. I'm the guy perpetually in the friend zone. No, that doesn't just happen between just friends. Yeah. Speaking from experience. Okay. In any case. So let's start talking about what we're going to be covering. I like how Toby acknowledged, yep, you guys got it. Yes. Okay, so let me go over what I want to talk about as far as tonight goes. So first of all, I want to talk about the Gaslight District being greenlit for a full season, and not just something like woohoo, that's awesome. But I want to get into the finances of this, which I know for some people the finances isn't the most fun thing, but in terms of understanding like how to write our own stories, especially for people who want to do their own big productions, it is about the money. It is about understanding the budget, what you want to do with that budget, what kinds of thresholds you need to aim for. And I know that it's not the most entertaining of things to talk about, but it's very important if you want to be a self-made storyteller. You need to understand money and how that works in order to make the dream work. Otherwise, it all starts falling apart really fast. And we don't want to see people go into debt, needlessly going into debt to achieve their dreams. We want you to be smart about it. Then once we've talked about that, I want to show you guys what it's like to publish with Amazon. Once I've done that, and walked you guys through that process. And the book is then submitted for review and for publishing. We're then going to do the writing lesson, which was suggested last week by TV Account, to talk about when do you know that you should end a story, like, or end the project. You like not just the story, but like, okay, I've been working on my story. When is it time to call it quits, or to say that it's good, it's time to move on to the next stage? And on top of that, managing expectations. Because for a lot of people, being a creative seems to be full of more disappointments than successes. So how exactly do you move forward without crushing your heart and soul? So that is what the lesson will be about tonight. And if there's any other things to talk about along the way, then we can do that. Art says, I hope they've given a decent amount of money to maintain quality between episodes. Ah, yes, the money. Okay, so let me take a quick drink right here, and then we will get started. Keep yourselves well hydrated. It's the summertime. Okay, let's get into this. The Gaslight District. So, the Gaslight District being greenlit, what this means is that Glitch Productions feels that this is a viable option for them. They can make it go forward, and it will not break the bank. That is absolutely important as a production company, because they want to support all of the creatives that they're working with. They want them to be able to tell the stories that they want to tell, which is one of the reasons why I love and support Glitch Productions. But as Part-Time Seagull says here in this little video that's right now playing, this only happened because enough merch was sold. And the reason why I say that is because a production as high quality as the Gaslight District could very, very easily become a money drain. It could suck out all the wealth from them they are making through the Amazing Digital Circus, which is a huge moneymaker. A huge moneymaker. So in order to illustrate this a little bit, let's actually do the math. Yay, math, so much fun. You know what? Fun little fact. Back when I was in high school, math might have arguably been my best subject until a teacher my sophomore year unlocked my love for history. I did not like history. History was my worst subject in school, and then it was a teacher my sophomore year who just made history tons of fun. I took it like a fish to water, and then became my best subject. But until then, math was arguably my best subject, despite the fact that I never really liked math. But applied math. Oh, now that's fun. When you actually take the numbers and you make sense of them. Why should anyone care? Geometry was my mortal enemy. My geometry teacher was a mortal enemy for most of the students. Mr. Kennerly. Mr. Kennerly. There's a little short African-American guy who was the track star coach, and he had anger management issues. And so like I knew the kid that he threw a desk at. It wasn't a rumor. It was true. Mr. Kennerly was like, it's like, do your math. Then it's like, no, the kid said, my friend said something stupid back to him, because we're sophomores in high school saying do stupid stuff. And so Mr. Kennerly picked up a desk and hurled it across the room. This little 5 foot, almost nothing guy just chucked it at him, and he's like, "Holy crap!" Everyone's diving out of the way. The desk takes out a shelf, and stuff is flying everywhere. And like Kennerly's like is like that teacher in the Key and Peele skit, or he's just like, "Son of a," and stuff just starts flying everywhere. And when I had him as a teacher, he never threw anything at any of us. But oh my gosh, he was like bending stuff, breaking stuff, like death glaring at people, like, "Do your math. Do your math. Do you not know what a tangent is? Do you not know how to get the hypotenuse?" It's like, woo, take that energy out to the track field, my man. OG sounds like a fun guy. You know what? I found him to be fun even while I had him as a teacher, but oh my gosh, no. I was like, never cross this man, never say anything stupid to him. If I can't say something nice or something smart, don't say nothing at all and just get a death glare. Chris Talk says my classmate threw a desk and was expelled. Yeah, I can see that happening. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So Chris Talks also says, I hope the Gaslight District fandom treats the female characters better than the Amazing Digital Circus fans. You know what? I would hope so too. It all could. Yeah, there needs to be a discussion about how fans feel way too entitled these days. Fans are important. You need to take in fan feedback. You need to engage positively with the fans, but sometimes the fans just takes things way too far. Yikes. Yeah. I hope that people engage positively with the Gaslight District as well. Now then, all that being said, let's start doing our math. Woo! Actually, no, I'm going to open up another tab so that way we can very quickly do our math. And let's see here. We're going to share the screen. We're going to do the entire screen and share. All right, there's our eternal swirl going right there. And okay, our entitled document. Okay, here's what we got to know about animation production budgets. Usually, the Hollywood standard for one animated episode, that is 20 to 22 minutes of animation. And it doesn't matter if it's CGI or hand-drawn. 20 to 22 minutes of animation, any one episode, usually costs $1 to $3 million. So let's put that into numbers right here. There you go. $1 million. Woohoo! So 1 million. Let's also just do the 3 million for the fun of it right here. That is a lot of stinking buckaroos. Do you think that it's easy to get that much money in order to, again, make 20 to 22 minutes of animation? It's not. You need producers with deep pockets and with lots of connections in order to get that much money. Now, the indie standard of animation, this is where things get a little bit interesting. So, for instance, not the dungeon crawlers. Crud, why am I suddenly blanking on the amazing episode, on the amazing show about the dungeon salespeople? Oh my gosh, I'm such a bad fan. Gah! Okay, let's see here. Dungeon, not Dungeon Soup, not Dungeon Sherpa. Dungeon Retailer Show. Oh boy. I just feel so dumb. Why am I blanking on this? Why am I blanking so hard? Anyways. So for one episode done by one dude doing all the animation and paying the bare minimum for the voice acting to do about 8 minutes costs $50,000. $50,000 bare minimum 8 minutes of animation. That is your bare minimum, bare bones production. When we look at something like what Glitch has done, so Glitch with the Amazing Digital Circus and Murder Drones, Kevin and Luke once let it slip that they had needed backers in order to make Murder Drones happen. They went into debt to do that by getting a bunch of IOUs, which probably means that they were looking in the realms of $500,000 at least for one episode. Whoo! Now, because they were using CGI, and CGI allows you to already then have your characters and your settings basically prepackaged. Once you've built them, you can pull them up way more easily and populate them and animate them as you need. So basically, your $500,000 up front is an investment already in future episodes. Your future episodes, unless you're doing way more, don't necessarily need more of an investment. However, as we saw with Murder Drones just kept on getting better and better with each subsequent episode, meaning that they were pouring in more money. Now, Glitch has said they spent, so the budget for every episode of their shows is 80% covered by the sale of merch. That is important. That's important to note. So when we put 80%, 0.8, man, 0.8 times 500,000. Just that way you guys know that the math checks out. All-knowing Google will do it for us. That means $400,000 needs to be sold in merchandise. Woo-wee! That's a lot. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Now, if you've gone to their store and decided to buy one of their plushies and the likes, you're looking at $25 for a plushie. Okay, so 400,000. So if we're going to just talk plushies, if we're going to talk just plushies, means we got to go back into here. We got to divide now by 25. And that gives us 16,000. That means that they need to sell 16,000 plushies in order to help fund the next episode. So that's a lot. That's a lot. This requires them to have a huge fan base with money on hand in order to buy at least one plushie in order to fund the next episode. Here's then where the anomaly starts coming in, because you have the Amazing Digital Circus with let's go count them up here. So if we head on over to here to Google, not Google, YouTube. Man, mirrors my head today. Thank goodness for calculators, keeping it so otherwise my math would just be totally bonkers. Okay, so here are our millions of views. I'm not going to count right here the Pomni Wake Up adventure because that's just small. That would not do much in terms of getting revenue. The reason why I'm going here is to show where Glitch could say right off the bat, we can go big. We can go big with the Gaslight District. This all comes back around to the Gaslight District. So 382 million views for our pilots. So 382 million. Come back on over here to 156 million. Man, Dr. Evil is absolutely loving all of these millions. Plus 66 million for episode 3. 66 million. Then for episode 4, the Fast Food Masquerade, 89 million views. And then as of today, $52 million for episode 5 in Untitled. Okay, now let's start adding up these numbers right here. So we have 362. Whoop. 362 plus, what was it again? 156. Come on. Come on, calculator. Okay. Plus 156 plus 66 plus 89 plus 52. 725. Let's add on the zeros to make that million. This is 725 million views. The reason why this matters is because these episodes that they are airing are obviously monetized. YouTube is incentivized to monetize these so that way they can get as much money as possible off of these episodes because their algorithm shows stuff that is monetized way more than stuff that is not monetized. I guarantee that Glitch Productions greased some palms, called in some favors in order to make sure that even some of their darker episodes are monetized so that way they get cash. It's monetized, they get cash, YouTube gets more cash. Hallelujah, everyone goes home happy. The more views you get and the longer retention rate that you get for each episode, the more you get paid in thousands. You can be paid anywhere between $1,000 to $6,000 per million views. Now, 6,000 is everyone watches it through, all the way through, no one clicks out early. That's nearly impossible to get. And we know that there's plenty of people who haven't liked some of these episodes. There's people who just click out whenever, for whatever reason. So they're not going to get $6,000 per million views. But you know what? Let's say, because this is a very popular show, that they're easily going to get $4,000 per million views. So we now then multiply this by 4. And what will that get us then? So when we multiply then here by 4, that is right here, 2,900. But we got to add on to that the extra 1,000. Whoop. So there you have it. That is the amount of money from views alone. From views alone that the Amazing Digital Circus has brought in. Never mind the merchandise. That's good. Holy cow, that is good. Nearly $3 million off of just one show. Whatever investment they put into Murder Drones has already been paid off. Has already been paid off. And they had money on hand to start production for the Gaslight District and for Knights of Guinevere. So this is looking stinking good. Now, when we think about the quality of the Gaslight District, which again, I know is not everyone's favorite show, but the animation quality was really, really up there. It would not surprise me if they went as far as $1 million to make one episode. Now, again, through CGI, they're able then to kind of keep those costs down a little bit going on because they now have the models and everything, but it will still be very expensive. The Amazing Digital Circus is a moneymaker, but it only has 4 more episodes to go. And when we look right here, there is a definite decline in number of views. While the next 4 episodes are likely to garner anywhere between 50 to 90 million views, there's no guarantee that you're going to get another 150 or even over 300 million views. So that means that while the Amazing Digital Circus is an absolute moneymaker, you cannot rely on it forever to bankroll every single show. And if the Gaslight District, again, is anywhere in the ballpark of what Hollywood spends on any one episode, that is unsustainable. That is unsustainable. The Gaslight District. Let's have a look at the Gaslight District. How many millions of views? Gaslight District, the pilot episode, has only gotten 18 million views. And if we again say, okay, maybe it's got something similar in terms of what the Amazing Digital Circus has gotten. So you multiply that by 4. And what you're then looking at is you're looking at $72,000 in revenue just off of YouTube alone. $72,000 against anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million to make that episode. On the lower scale, you are still over $400,000 in the hole, which means that, again, you have to have sold around 16,000 plushies and other forms of merchandise in order to make sure that the show remains viable going forward. They can rely on the Amazing Digital Circus to cover the costs up to a certain extent because they're making just so much money. This is not even including all of the merchandise, this nearly $3 million. But that is not, but again, they cannot rely on that forever. And going into 2D animation is going to require that they expand their production company even further and get a whole lot more people on hand with a whole new skill set. So they're going to be spending money to expand. The profits that they are raking in from the Amazing Digital Circus is absolutely going into Knights of Guinevere to keep that up and running. In order to do that first pilot, which they are hoping. They're doing the Knights of Guinevere not just to crank out one episode. It is meant to be a show. So this is the kind of money that you are looking at, because I know there's some people. I'll stop sharing my screen here for a moment, and we'll bring back some Elden Ring to talk about this. So Uh, so if you yourself, and I know there's some people who follow us here on Camille's Harem who are interested in making their own shows, who are interested in making their own video games, you are looking at a pretty high production budget. Unless you know the tricks of the trade to really bring down those costs, it costs a lot of money. Now then, so then, Dungeon Flippers. Thank you, I'm Omega. Whoo! Uh, man, I feel so bad that I just could not remember the name. Oh, I'm such a bad fan. Now, Arts, your question: $50,000 all for voice actors? No, it's $50,000 for the voice actors and to keep the guy alive while he is working on the show. So a lot of that money is basically meant to help him just survive. Like, okay, like I can live on $30,000 for the next year. And then the other $20,000 goes to hiring out voice actors and hiring out a handful of people for like helping me fix certain segments of the show, so that way it's the best quality that it can be. That again, that's him working on just an absolute pinching the pennies. We have no money kind of a budget. That which, if you know, like, this is where the skill in Dungeon Flippers is incredible, because for as low as the budget is, it looks fantastic and it's really, really well done. So if you know what you're doing, you can make $50,000 go a long way. But if you're a group like Glitch Productions with dozens of employees, more high-profile voice actors and actresses that you are hiring for your projects, you are going to end up handing out way more money, which means you got to be able to pull it in more. Art says, I hope there's no pop quiz there at the end. No, don't worry. No pop quiz, at least not on this stuff. Guy That Hates Bull says, I haven't seen the Gaslight District pilot. I like the Amazing Digital Circus, but dislike Murder Drones. Would I like the pilot? Guy That Hates Bull, let me just say this. A lot of people who really like the Amazing Digital Circus did not like the Gaslight District. If Murder Drones was not your jam, very likely the Gaslight District, it will also not be your particular favorite. It will not be your cup of tea. I would recommend watching the first episode just so that way you can form your own opinion. I personally really, really liked it. And the reason why I liked it was because it blended aesthetic and characters into a very interesting mystery plot. At least as far as setting up what the big mystery is going to be. A lot of what people thought the show would be about overall was actually resolved or immediately addressed within the first episode, which for some people probably is another reason why they weren't huge fans of it, because what they were expecting was resolved pretty quickly. Art says, I'm not sure I could buy 16,000 plushies. Where would I put them all? That's the question. Simon says, so they pulled a water margin and bribed the officials of YouTube? Maybe. There's all kinds of things that happen behind the scenes. Business is not as clean as we like to sometimes imagine. Like even within the realms of selling books. So like that's where that's the industry that I want to get into, selling my books. And what I've come to learn, even as an outsider, is that for instance, a lot of authors don't realize that publishers are behind the scenes making deals, having special meetings and luncheons and bribes and all kinds of stuff in order to ensure that your book finds its way into the hands of the right people at the right magazine or at the right newspaper or at the right website, in order for you to get all the reviews necessary to then have hype that maybe wasn't actually earned. Sad to say as it is. And then on top of that, like the New York Times bestseller list, the New York Times bestseller list is not based on the number of books that are actually bought by readers. It's based on the number of books bought by bookstores that haven't even been sold yet. And publishing houses have deals with bookstores to buy a certain number of books, which they promise will sell really, really well, in exchange for other like deals and whatnot behind the scenes that allow bookstores to not go under. So it's, yeah, there's a lot going on that's totally out of the author's wheelhouse and out of the author's control that contributes to whether or not a book will be successful. And that's that's business. That's the business that goes beyond the whole laws of supply and demand. When people say that economics is based off of very simple and easy to follow rules, those people have not actually sat down to do business. Oy. And that goes for so many industries. I remember once stumbling across the financial records for Albertsons while I was doing janitor duties, and I was like, "Holy cow, what the heck?" And I was also like, "Why did my manager leave this out for anyone to come and see?" Anyways, that's another story. All right, so we can use hand puppets. Guy that's, well, Elden Ring is a great game. It absolutely is. A guy also says, I don't really know what to expect. Probably some gaslighting, I've gathered. Oh, yes, there's gaslighting. Though the gaslighting is probably on a much grander scale than what you might be thinking. Or it says we got to win the lottery to fund our animations. Yeah, that's how it feels sometimes. That's how it feels. They're like, yeah, you have to pull out all kinds of tricks and really be dedicated to making a show in order to make that dream happen. You've got to pull out all different kinds of tricks. You have to get people's love and attention for your project very early on, very quick. Once you have it, you have to just hold on with an iron grip. You've got to do all of these GoFundMes. You got to work with other people. You got to take out loans. Whew. Yeah, making animation work from the indie side of things takes a lot. Takes a lot to make it go down. And yeah, if you won the lottery, that would definitely make the financial side of things a whole lot easier. But then you get into all of the fun of actually making a show, which carries all of its own difficulties. All right, let me take a drink of water. So, again, that's the math. There's our math for the Gaslight District. And one of the interesting things, like thinking about the shows, well, I say, like, in comparison, for instance, between like the Amazing Digital Circus and Murder Drones to the Gaslight District, Murder Drones was doing so dang well right off the bat that it was guaranteed. Like, they were like, oh yeah, we're greenlighting the whole show. We're doing it. Murder Drones, thanks to Liam Vickers already having a lot of followers, did well enough right off the bat that they felt pretty confident with greenlighting it. I think like maybe 2 months after the first pilot premiered. So it was doing pretty well. This show, however, it took them over 3 months to make the announcement, which tells me that in comparison to the other two big shows that Glitch has had in its recent history, that the Gaslight District is definitely nowhere near as popular as Murder Drones, and definitely the Amazing Digital Circus by comparison. And so, coming back to the idea of money, again, they want to help Part-Time Seagull make this show happen. They they were convinced of its success. Otherwise, they would not have invested in the pilot. They thought it could work. But it took more time for it to happen than I think that they initially thought. And this will come around to tempering expectations when we get to the writing lesson tonight. So I think that that's why Glitch took 3 months to fully announce, hey guys, this is what we're doing, and we are now moving on ahead with it. I feel like they are genuinely pulling a fair amount of money from the Amazing Digital Circus in order to make this show continue to happen. So again, if we go from the perspective of maybe they're spending about $500,000 per episode on this happening, and they've said that the funding for each episode, 80% of it must come from the merchandise. And we've already seen by the numbers that just based on ad revenue from YouTube alone, it's highly unlikely that they have made the requisite 20% from ad revenue alone for the Gaslight District, which means that they are very likely siphoning off the funds or I don't say siphoning off the funds, but they're siphoning off the profits from the Amazing Digital Circus to make this show happen. And so it's required then that the show does very well in terms of merchandise sales in order to justify its existence. Because they will not be able to forever rely on the Amazing Digital Circus. On top of that, Knights of Guinevere is coming, and that's going to also be an expensive endeavor. So that right there, that is just already lets you know in terms of indie animation, this is the kind of stuff that people have to think about. As storytellers, it's fun to just focus on the story, on the world building, on the characters, because that's really where all the fun is at. But you need to have an idea of the investments that you are putting in. Like, for instance, today, looking at my bank account and things that I need to do, as well as what I want to do for my stories, I've been like, okay, I need to do a little bit better at some of the budgeting because of the money that I need to invest into the making of my next novel. Granted, I don't need to worry about millions of dollars being thrown around like what is done with animation, indie or Hollywood wise, but there's still a certain amount of money that does get invested into the creation of every single book, especially if you want unique artwork, if you want people to help you with the editing and with all of that. If you don't want to go the route of relying on AI, which I don't want to rely on AI because AI steals your work. AI in many ways I feel is unethical to a good creative process. That means that I have to shell out more cash. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind as you create your stories. And when we start talking more about the book that I'll be publishing tonight and showing to you guys how that all works, sorry, let's get right here. I will share with you guys how much money was invested into making this book happen. And it might surprise you guys, either that you're going to be like, oh, that's way more than I thought, or something you're going to be like, oh, that's actually way less than I thought. But in order to create a good kids book, yeah, I had to spend money. So we'll be going into more of that here in just a bit. As Art says, but hey, if it takes off, then it's worth it. Oh, yeah. If your investment pays off, of course it's worth it. Of course it is. Now then, let's see here. Any questions that you guys wish to ask thus far about anything else that you might think like, hey Lars, what were your thoughts here about Glitch, what Glitch is doing, budget-wise, animation-wise, announcement-wise, or anything else. This is your chance to ask me really anything else before we shift gears and I start sharing with you all what it's like to publish a book. And they'll actually give me a chance to real quick send out I gotta send out something to someone real quick, and then also make sure that I've got everything set up. Yikes, on my end, because even though I've already set up this thing earlier today, so it should be as smooth as silky butter, technical difficulties always somehow rear their ugly heads. All right, let me just make sure that window there, beautiful, it is open. Most excellent. Okay. All right. So Arts asks, how much would you pay a voice actor per episode for an indie project on average? Always wondered that. That is an excellent question. That is honestly an excellent question. I think it depends. It depends a lot, for instance, on what your budget is versus who you're trying to get and for how many episodes. Voice actors do not make a lot of money, at least per job. So, for instance, Matt Mercer, who is one of the big names in video game voice acting. Holy cow, this guy's got a gorgeous voice and a face to boot. He should be worth millions. Matt Mercer, like every year, has to work like 20 to 30 jobs in order to make ends meet for everything that he does. Because, yeah, I mean, he has got his own company and everything on the side, but that's its own expenses. In order just to keep up with his work, to pay the bills for living in LA, this guy's got to work 20 to 30 jobs a year. It's pretty incredible. So if we just quickly do a little Google search right here, because I'm also like, okay, what would it be? What's the pay for a typical voice acting gig? No, I'm not interested in your AI nonsense. All right. So here you go. $100 for radio. And I can already tell you this from my experience in doing some voice acting for a show that will most likely never get made. Yeah, that's its own little story. I'm not going to say any more beyond that, just in case it does get made. And I don't want to spoil anything. But I was once contracted to do a voice acting job, and it was just $100. It was $100 for my work. That's just for starting out 2-3 minutes worth of lines at the most. If you're someone who is a little bit more famous and working for a job that's way bigger, then you can get paid up to way more. A TV commercial, says right here, is up to $10,000, and that's because there's a lot more money being thrown at big commercials because they're hoping to rake in the big buco bucks. According to ZipRecruiter, you are making $50 an hour as a voice actor, which sounds really nice, but the thing is that if you're being clocked by the hour, chances are they're going to try to make sure that they get their work done as fast as possible and not have you in there for a full 40-hour work week, because that would be spending way more money than what most companies would want to do. If you're doing an audiobook narration, you're getting paid $200 to $300 per hour of recording, which is excellent. But it's so hard to get a good job doing it. It's so hard to get a good job like that, because anyone who has an audiobook, they want to make sure that they have the right voice for the job. And if your voice doesn't match to what they want to do, then sorry, you're not getting a job there. Yikes. But in terms of you, maybe Arts wanting to be the prospective employer, you're looking at shelling out for any video. Like if let's say you're just doing like a YouTube video and you're hiring people to help you on out, you are looking at probably $100 per voice actor that you are working with, maybe more, depending again on who you're getting and for what kind of job you're hiring them for. But baseline, $100. Hope that answers that. Obviously, the bigger voice the bigger voice actors and actresses get way more money per job, but they still have to work multiple jobs in order to make a living as a voice actor. It says, if you were to make a short, what would be an investment for making a live action suit for an animated scene or rotoscoping? Ooh, that is a good question. I don't actually know. And that would, I think, involve to a certain degree who you know. Because, for instance, our friend Zaza, who we had on for 2 live streams talking about art, they have done their own live action stunts in order to trace the movements of characters for hand-drawn and CGI art. And so, like, for instance, I could reach out to Zaza and be all like, hey, would you like to do some acting? And we're going to record you doing these various movements in order for us then to animate the scenes over you or to do the rotoscoping, what have you. And that would come down to what kind of, again, like what's the good industry standard? How long am I hiring Zaza for? How much do they need to do for each one of these action sequences? Those are things that you would want to consider as you're then putting together the budget for hiring this person out. Most actors do not get paid, just like voice actors do not get paid good money. So the industry standard is already considerably low. Like you'd only be shelling out maybe a couple $100 to get all of the action that you need to then do your animation. Art says, that's lower than I thought. Yeah, that's the thing. It is lower than you would expect. And that's one of the reasons why it's hard to make a living as an actor. But also another thing to consider is this. How many people already have on hand just hundreds of dollars that they can start throwing at hiring out voice actors and live actors to make your story come to life. And that's not even yet considering animation, storage, processing, advertising. It's a lot. Oh boy, is it a lot. Just some fun food for that right there. And I'm just going to play a little bit of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That way we've got something more than just staring at Part-Time Seagull. As handsome as that logo is. Commoncraft says, hello, what did I miss? Well, Commoncraft, you came in basically at the end of the business discussion regarding the green lighting for all of the Gaslight districts. And we're still talking monies before we go into publishing a book tonight. Art says, you don't see a lot of audio books anymore. Oh, there's a lot of audio books still around. It's amazing how many people I know are like, I won't read a book unless there's an audio book version. I've had people tell me that. They're like, Lars, I would love to read your books, but until you have an audiobook version, I really don't feel like investing my time because I'm just so busy otherwise. And I'm like, that's fair, but I'm like, oh, that's a lot of effort to make an audiobook. However, I am working with a friend of mine to make an audiobook version of Bleed Steam and Steel. And I don't know when that's going to come about, but I'm hoping to bring that to people. Art says, no wonder anime VAs do as many conventions as they can. Exactly. And especially because so many of them, thanks to the guild rules, basically have to live in places like Los Angeles. They need the convention money. There are those who, for instance, who live out on the East Coast, which some places on the East Coast are pretty cheap. Others might live in Texas, which can also be somewhat cheap, but is not always the case. And again, because you're only getting paid maybe a few $100 per job, that means that you have to work, again, 20 to 30 jobs each year just in order to make ends meet. And again, that even goes for a high-profile guy like Matt Mercer. Hannah's here. Woohoo! Great to have you here, Hannah. Concraft says, I just remember a situation a while back about the studio behind the Hades games. The studio wasn't union for the voice actors. They did treat the voice actors well, from what I know. They did mostly stuff like get a janitor to record a voice line or two for a quick buck. They had a controversy because one of the voice actors tried to trick people on social media that the studio was abusing the actor just to force the studio to go union so that the voice actor could afford the transition. Yes, and that's, oh boy, unions. Thing is, unions are a good idea, and they are good for protecting the workers. Like, it's not that unions are not inherently an evil, awful thing like so many people wish to make them out to be. The problem is that unions can get very political. They can also start causing a whole lot of problems with the arbitrary rules that they force onto their members. And in many places, you might not get, for instance, a good acting job unless you are a member of the union. And that just, that can cause all kinds of difficulties. And then the union dues that you put in order to keep Hollywood executives accountable by bringing them to lawsuits if necessary, then also means that you have to then pay all these union dues in order to have a number of lawyers and people who are there ready to fight for you full time. It's such a mess. Art says they need someone to read them the book instead of just reading it. LOL. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it goes for some people. I am not a huge audiobook guy. If I'm going to read a book, I want to read the book myself. But there are some times where having an audiobook is just really nice. Audiobooks is what helped me to get through Wheel of Time, especially the middle books, because they got really boring. And the audiobook for 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is amazing. Oh, so good. So, and then also the audiobooks for the Harry Potter series is a lot of fun. Like if you're looking for a way to spice up the reading experience for Harry Potter, audiobooks are great for that. Okay. So, with all that said, unless you guys have any other questions that you wish to quickly ask, then let's get around to publishing a book. Woohoo! That's a lot of CDs in some cases. Yep. Comcraft says the thing was that the studio would be forced to pay union pay for many people who were hired for a handful of voice lines. And because people hate on the voice actor for pulling that stunt because of the whole lying a bunch of people to afford transition thing, it was a mess. Yeah, I can only imagine. Hey, ISO's here. Hey, what did I miss? ISO, you missed the conversation about money with the Gaslight District. We broke down the amount of money that might have been spent, the revenue that it likely brought in, and why it is that it took basically 3 months for Glitch to say, we're going to greenlight this really expensive show because, the numbers just based on just based on views and what kind of ad revenue they got off of views, there's no way that Glitch made even 20% back on ad revenue alone, meaning that they really, really needed to make good merchandise sales. And Part-Time Siegel himself said that they had made enough merchandise sales to justify greenlighting the rest of the show. But they're very likely pulling from the profits made by the Amazing Digital Circus in order to keep the show going. And for us as novice creators, whether you're making a book, a show, or a video game, those are all things to keep in mind, because you will have to invest in making this all work. The merch doesn't disappoint. Oh yeah, no, Glitch invests in making good merchandise. They really do. And the numbers I was throwing out there earlier of like, okay, $25 for a plushie, you just got to remember that money was actually put into making that plushie happen. So they're not making $25 immediately. They got to sell actually quite a bit more merchandise. It's not just 16,000 plushies to sell. It's 16,000 plus so many other products in order to make any show happen. So like me over here, I've got my five plushies. I've got Uzi and N. I got Crow. Let's see. I've got Uzi. I've got V. I've got Crow. Let's see. Yeah, I know my own plushies. I've got N. I've got V. I've got Crow Uzi. I've got Dog N. I've got Gummy Goo. I then have, let's see here. I've got 3 posters. And then the acrylic, the acrylic board for V. And I also then have Tessa, my little vinyl of Tessa somewhere around here in my office. So I've bought 10 different products from them. Woohoo! They need thousands of more said products sold in order to make their shows happen. Tyler says, I bet James Baxter was the lead animator for Knights of Guinevere. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out as more details of the show come to light. I'm really excited to learn more about Knights of Guinevere. Comcraft says, I wonder if Glitch is pulling something I have heard some other studios make, using a profitable product to pay to make the less profitable ones. There's a studio that does the using gotcha slop. Commoncraft Brazil, that is actually how most production studios run their business. They find a really, really good moneymaker in order to afford everything else that they do. Glitch is absolutely doing the same thing. Connor says, I wish I could afford Glitch merch. Yeah, I mean, and I've had to cut back because of my own financial situation recently. I would love to get more, but yes, don't break the bank just to get merch. Or says, hey, as long as the show and products are good, yeah, exactly. I don't know, he says, oh, like Sunrise. Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's that good thought right there, I'm Omega. Okay. So with that all being said, let's go back to sharing the screen. Let me make sure I can still see your guys' comments and everything here, because I don't want to lose you guys as I'm going through all of this. All right, there we go. Awesome sauce. Okay. I says, remember everyone, you spend $25 for a plush. Glitch spends just under $1 million each episode. Exactly. Whoo! So much. Yeah, the amount of money that goes into all of this is just amazing. I wish I was dealing with that much cash. Concraft says the big issue with Glitch merch is that where I live, everything in dollars costs 5 times the original price before shipping it goes into it. Oh man, oh that's rough. I'm sorry to hear that, Commoncraft. Yeah, that definitely causes problems. Okay. There are AA games cheaper. Holy crap! And AA games get expensive. Whew. All right, so I'll be sharing my screen again, the entire screen. And the eternal swirl has returned. Okay, so here we go, everyone. Da 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 da. Kindle Direct Publishing. This is what you log into, what you subscribe to if you are going to publish with Amazon. And what you then do. So let me just quickly pop that out over here. Yeah, we're going to save and continue. I'll hide this. All right. So right here, as you begin creating your stories and everything, this will be your bookshelf. You have the create option, which allows you to start creating your own books. You'll populate them with all of the stuff. We're going to go over that. And here you can see, here are the books. This is the book that we'll be publishing tonight, The White Snake. Here we got Puss in Boots and the Dark Riddles, A Study in Blood, Tumble Teller, The Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy, Notice Me Senpai, Bleeds Demon Steel, The Legend of the Ten Lords. Oh boy, yeah, that messy one right there. Sandwich Desperados, Knights of Halley Cruise, The Dark Rebellion. So those are, there you have it. Those are the books that Lars has, that I myself have published and am working on publishing. White Snake should have come out in May, but due to various problems, that arose, some on my end, some on other people's ends, this book has been kicked all the way back to the middle of July. But honestly, it's kind of a good thing because now you guys get to see what it's like to set up a book with Amazon. And all of this is for free. I'm going to stress that. All of this is for free, which is very, very helpful if you're doing stuff on a budget. However, because it is all free, you are confined to Amazon's streamlined way of making all of this work, which really, really cuts into your creative potential. There are other self-publishing companies that probably allow you more freedom, but it likely means that you have to give up more of your cut of the profits, or maybe even an investment up front, which other authors and publishers have counseled, saying, don't spend a lot of money or don't invest a lot of money up front to publish a book unless you know you can trust that publishing house, because otherwise you're going to get taken advantage of. And Amazon definitely takes advantage of its authors too. But again, they do provide their services for free. And that's something that's hard to overlook. So we shall continue the setup. I've already put it all in. We shall continue the setup. Comcar says, I wish I had the confidence to publish a book, even though I still got to get into the habit of writing at least a bit with frequency. Yes. First of all, Commoncraft, you need to actually finish a book in order to publish it. And the thing is, it is scary to publish the first book, but it is, even though it can be such a frustrating experience, it's also a very rewarding experience. Now, here's what you got to do. Once you get in, you state what will be the primary language of the book. There's all these different options. Woo! From Max to Latin to Irish, Icelandic, Danish, Croatian, Cornish, Basque even. Basque, Afrikaans, Italian, Spanish, French, German. We're going with English. The book's title, The White Snake. Subtitle, Fairy Tales Beyond the Wall, The White Snake. Series, is this optional? So this is optional. If your book is a part of a series or will be eventually, you can add to it. Alternatively, you can add it later or using the options on the bookshelf. Here is something to understand. And I'm actually not going to say, okay, add it to a series right now. My reasoning for that is because once you've added something to a series, then Amazon forever links it to that. And once you've created a series, it is so dang hard to edit it. Once you create that series, Amazon does not like to edit the series. You are stuck in it. So that's something to bear in mind. Only say it is a series when you are ready to commit to it and that you've double-checked, triple-checked, quadruple-checked everything. So that way everything looks clean and good. So that's important. Edition number, you only really have to worry about that if you end up doing, if you're doing multiple editions. Art says, oh dear, that is a trade-off for sure. Yes, it is. ISO, I haven't been writing a whole lot, so I'll get back into my schedule. Adulthood really sucks. Yes, adulthood definitely shakes up the internal schedule. It's all about figuring out the new normal once you're an adult. I'm already feeling that lack of time to do things that I want. Yeah, it's there. It's there. And trust me, it doesn't really get any better. It's all about figuring out what you can do, when you can do it, and dedicating yourself to that. And yeah, I've been really feeling that time crunch and time pinch as well, ISO, this year. It hasn't been going all that well for me. But you do what you can and you love what you can do. That's I feel the way that you have to approach it. Commoncraft Brazil says there's also the expectation of more books for the readers, I imagine. Exactly. Only once you're committed to doing a real series do you say, this is a series. I wish I had known that and appreciated that when I first got writing The Legend of the Ten Lords. Because I'm committed. Now, granted, I want to make all 6 books of The Legend of the Ten Lords. But now it means I'm locked in. And I was locked in from the beginning. I did not give myself any grace or wiggle room. So that's something to consider. Now then, you then put in your information. What's your name? I'm Lars Jensen. You can put in any name that you wish. I could have put in my full real name. But I'm just going right here with Lars Jensen. You can then add in any co-authors, any contributors if you wish. And then we have the description. Summarize your book. This will be the product description on Amazon so your customers can learn more about your book. Now, this is pretty straightforward. And you want to come up with the best way of selling your story. Now, what I have right here, and I'm actually going to edit this up a little bit. In a retelling of this lesser-known Brothers Grimm fairy tale, Finn finds his life turned upside down when he eats a white snake that grants him the ability to speak to animals. Immediately, he is thrown into a series of adventures from dealing with a witch, proving that a goose stole the royal jewels, and winning the love of a princess. How will Finn ultimately use his new powers? Will he prove himself a hero or run away when it matters most? So there you have it. I am going to change this up a little bit. In a retelling of this lesser-known Brothers Grimm fairy tale, Finn finds his life turned upside down. Finn finds his life turned upside down when he disobeys the king. Brum, brum, brum. He finds a mysterious white snake in the king's breakfast and eats it. This grants him the ability to speak to animals. So there you have it. So in a retelling of this lesser-known Brothers Grimm fairy tale, Finn finds his life turned upside down when he disobeys the king. He finds a mysterious... Get rid of that extra A. He finds a mysterious white snake in the king's breakfast and eats it. This is why you double-check what you've just written. This grants him the ability to speak to animals. Immediately, he's thrown into a series of adventures from dealing with a witch, proving that a goose stole the royal jewels, and winning the love of a princess. But how will Finn ultimately use his new powers? Will he prove himself a hero or run away when it matters most? All right, let me see what you guys have written right here. ISO says, I'm committed to making my series. I just have to finish the first book, though. Yes, finish that first book. Commoncraft says, the whole being committed, there is the perception of loss from the readers. A single book in a series that is then made a single book is a loss, while a book that becomes a series is a fun surprise. I had an idea of an urban fantasy story based on fairy tales. This book description just reminded me of that idea I put aside to focus on another idea that wouldn't let go of my brain. Oh, I know how that goes, Commoncraft. Not sure I'd want to find a snake in my breakfast. Exactly. Which is in the book. Like, Finn is like, what? You're eating a snake? And so he nibbles on it because he's very curious. Why is the king eating a snake? And then he gets his powers. And there's a whole lot more tied into that as well. So, that right there, that's my description. I own the copyright and hold all the necessary publishing rights. This is a very easy one to do. This is very easy because if you wrote it, if you did not steal it from anyone, you own the copyright. If you want to really protect your copyright, you then file and pay for the official copyright. But here's something though. You don't actually need to pay to have the copyrights. It is wise to do that, but that costs a lot of money. So don't be afraid. If you're like, I don't have $500 to drop on a copyright, you don't need to pay $500. You already own the story because you wrote it. However, if you want to make sure that you have full control over that story for other more legal matters, let's say that someone comes along and says, hey, ISO, I really want to make a series of movies based off of your books. You want to make sure that you own all the rights to the book that you can, so that way they can't pull any sort of sneaky shenanigans on you and take advantage of your story. That's basically it. It also gives you more control over ISBNs and stuff like that. Now then, reading age. Choose your youngest and oldest ages. Say with Amazon right here, once you hit 18 plus, I mean, that's your top. You can go all the way to baby. This book, and while it's got some darker elements to it and some gritty action, it may be every now and then a big word, the book is written to be enjoyed by young audiences. So I put 9 as the minimum. So from 9 all the way to 100 and beyond. You then choose your primary marketplace, which you normally would designate depending on which country you come from or which country you wish to sell the most in. Oddly enough, I have sold a book in Japan, weirdly enough. But all of my other books I've sold online come through the .com, meaning you're looking at America. So Amazon.com. Okay, your titles, current category. So this is where you go in, you have a bunch of categories. Let me show you guys why this category stuff is just weird. Irina Ivani says, all proof of creative ownership. Yes, owning the actual copyrights, like putting in all the extra money for it is, again, just be like, no one can take this from me. Legally speaking, though, if you already wrote it and you can prove that you wrote it, then you already have the copyright. Now then, I'll just say this whole situation right here is weird. The categories, the way that this is put together makes no sense. So, my category, literature and fiction. It's so huge. And so, subcategory, they do not have fantasy as an immediate one. You have to choose action and adventure. And then you have to go and select fantasy. It's really, really weird. It makes no sense how they have it set up. Keywords, I know there's a whole bunch of stuff about, here's your best keywords that you can do to get people's attention. To be all honest, your keywords don't matter unless you're already competing for like big money. Meaning that people already know who you are and you're trying to get your book differentiated from the thousands of other books out there. just know that whatever you publish is just going to go into the stew. It'll be indistinguishable from anything else. In my experience, you just choose the keywords that you feel best represent your story. So fairy tale, snake, adventure, romance, magic. So there we go. The publication date, you mark the publication date, release time are the exact same. And you say that you want, unless you're going to schedule the release of your story, we're going to be releasing it immediately, the moment that it is publishable. Would it be beneficial to use your name as a keyword? The answer is no, unless you are Brandon Sanderson or George R. R. Martin or what's her face Mass. No, absolutely not, because no one's going to look you up. That's just the way that it goes. Don't waste a line if you don't have to. Let's see here. Comcraft says Japan? How? I don't know. I would love to know. Comcraft says reminds me of the talk about some libraries mixing sci-fi and fantasy sections. Yep. Or it says sometimes people get curious and take a chance. That would be Lars's prospective buyer from Japan this instance. Yeah, it's probably the way that it went down. Suddenly got reminded of a horror story I found out about a story in a fandom of following abusing tags in AO3. Yes, and the tags do help that way. The tags absolutely do help that way to help connect people when they're interested and they're looking up stuff, which is why you want to have good keywords and tags. But again, I think that you want to be truthful about what you're doing. Now then, I can also put into here if I want, like I can put in fantasy as one of them, and we just move on. So save and continue, and you can always go back and change those up if you wish. And that's one of the nice things about this. Like when you publish, you can actually always go back and change things around if you want. You are, as opposed, weirdly enough, because the whole thing about once you make a series, you're locked in. When you're making any of these books on Amazon, you can change up stuff whenever you want. Now, here's where the ISBN gets interesting. You can choose to get a free KDP ISBN, or you can buy your own ISBN. Having your own ISBN means that you immediately can sell this book outside of Amazon's control. If you do the free ISBN, Amazon has the sole right to sell your book. Now, there are some authors who are all like, definitely get your own ISBN, invest the money. Why I don't invest the money into getting my own ISBN is because I lack the connections and the justification with anyone else who might take a chance on me to have other people create and publish the book and then sell it. I lack the connections. I lack the presence. There literally is no reason for me to spend the money on something that I cannot sell outside of Amazon. If you have the connections, if you have the ability to sell outside of Amazon, then get your own ISBN. So that's just something to keep in mind right there. Now the print options. I go for the easiest. No fuss. Black and white interior with white paper. Easy peasy. You can go with color if you want. It will make your books way more expensive. There's the cream paper, which cream is just another form of white. It makes a difference in how it turns out. I've seen it where some books sometimes look, it just doesn't look right to the eyes. It's headache inducing. So I just simply go for simple white. Premium color interior with white paper. Again, just makes your book more expensive if you want color in it. Now then, trim size. This will again affect the price. Simply doing 9x6, pretty easy. No bleed unless you're working on a PDF. So like these right here, a lot of the stuff already just kind of comes presets. so I don't have to deal with it. Glossy, nope, don't want glossy because glossy makes it weird. I just go with matte. I've already uploaded the manuscript, so it's already successfully loaded. And let me show you guys the cover, because the cover is a flippin' pain to work on. And this is honestly where, if you publish with Amazon, this is actually where some of your investment goes. So when I launched the cover creator, all right, as it's loading. So as it's loading right here, I'll just read what Commoncraft wrote. As the author had tagged a ship they'd never intended to write to hide a twist, the twist was that the ship won't happen and that the members of the ship hated each other and one tried to enslave the other in the end of the story. Yikes. Wow. What a ship. There is a yearly book fair where I live. Maybe be worth it. In my case, I also have relatives who have with people who love reading. So now, something to consider with book fairs. Book fairs don't actually publish the books. They sell the books. Book fairs get their books from publishing companies, from publishing houses, that they then sell at the book fairs. Most book fairs don't work with Amazon because Amazon is notoriously awful for bookstores to work with. So if you do want to have your book sold at a book fair, you need to make sure that the book fair is willing to buy from Amazon, or that you have another publishing company that is willing to publish your book and not just through Amazon. Otherwise, a book fair will not take your book. Unless, for instance, you go to something like the Tucson Festival of Books, where they allow for indie authors to bring copies of their books to the book fair, and then you can sell it there. If that's the case, Commoncraft, then it's a completely different conversation, and it's way easier to, even with Amazon, sell your books, because you just simply buy your books from Amazon at the cost of shipping. Otherwise, you don't have to spend any money. It's just, I should say, you spend the investment that you put in is just simply the investment of shipping and the direct publishing, which makes it like 3 times cheaper than if you bought it as a regular consumer. And then that allows you then to sell your books for a profit at the book fair, which is what I've done at the Tucson Festival of Books and at the Arizona Renaissance Fair. All right. Art says book fairs are awesome. Found some great stuff at book fairs. Oh, yeah. Book fairs are incredible to go to. Absolutely get there if you can. Libraries are always willing to accept free books. You can get featured as a local author. Not really. It can happen. Over here in Tucson, where I have talked with librarians, they've moved away from that. If you want to donate your book and have it then become a part of their collection, absolutely, they are more than happy to do that, and then your book is available to read at the library, which is another great way to go. But unfortunately, unless there is a specific branch of your local library chain that is featuring authors, it's very, very hard to actually become a featured author at a library. I know because I've asked. Commoncraft says, the thing with the author, it was a fanfic. The ship was popular. The author tagged a ship they intended to make utterly unviable as romance solely to attract fans of the ship. The book fair where I live, I consider because I have seen self-published people put their books in that fair. Oh, awesome. If that's the case, then absolutely, Commoncraft, go that route. Do it. Okay, now let's return to the making of the cover. So right here, the quick tutorial. Here's your little buttons. The red lines show you your margins. You can only put stuff within there. If you try to go out of those margins, you will not be allowed to publish your book. It will literally stop you. And okay, here you go. Now then, the author's image right here, you don't have to worry about this at all unless you want to do something with it. It will not populate this with just a random square. So if you don't want to put your picture right here, you don't have to. And then boom, you have all the space. Or do you? This is one of the problems with for instance, writing out what you want to with what Amazon provides. Amazon does not allow for creativity when it comes to creating your cover. Your cover must be exactly to their specifications, or it will not work. Let me repeat that again. Unless it is exactly to their specifications, your book will not work. So the quality must be 300 DPI at least. Otherwise, your book is going to look awful when published. Your choices for font, negligible. It's so restrictive. Where you're allowed to put it is also restricted. How you wish to set up things, also restricted. So you say, what kind of specifications exactly? So right here, there's this one. If I wish to enlarge this, I am stuck with exactly these font types. I don't want, I would actually want my font to be larger. I would like to have it at 16. But 16 is not an option. I must go to 18. If I make it go to 18, it becomes too big. So I got to make it 14, but 14 is just too small for this space. Also, on top of that, you cannot alter it in order for it to pop out more against the colors. So you're kind of screwed there. There's also no way to make this pop. All color options other than white are bad right here. And you're not given many your option right here. This is horribly limited. This is not a good selection of font colors. The spine right here, tiny. And now, granted, that's because of the size of the book. This is a novella, so it's not a huge book. But the text, once this is printed, this is tiny. It's barely readable. I might, to a certain point, not even have it. But and I wish I could show you guys what it's like with Puss in Boots and the Dark Riddles. There's enough of a spine that you kind of do need to have your name and the title printed there on the spine. Otherwise, it's just empty and looks kind of silly otherwise. So, yikes. Yeah, you're stuck in there. You're stuck to very exact font sizes, font colors, font types, and you do not get creative control. Like, I would love to have the white snake not be here, but this is the best that it works. This is the best I can do with what Amazon offers in terms of where I can place the title, which is why actually for most of my books I hire someone to do the title and to do the book description and everything. I hire someone to do that usually, but that costs more money. And that's why, and again, if you're doing something on a budget, yeah, Amazon's kind of nice for that. But then again, you're restricted and it just sucks. Yay. Yeah, Amazon gives the dimensions. Yeah, you're stuck to Amazon's dimensions. If you try to break it, they will not publish your book. Congress says, sounds almost like they're trying to make machine-generated covers the best option. To a certain extent, the thing is that Amazon wants it the most streamlined possible. And so they do not want any funny biz to deal with, so that way they can just hit print, and then it prints itself, and they can ship it off. Amazon is not interested in your creativity. They're interested in your product. And that's something important to think about. Which, again, if it wasn't for free, I probably wouldn't use their services. But because it's free and because it puts you into one of the largest markets, that's why I personally feel that it's worth it. Even though Amazon is not a good business partner. Art says, who did the cover art for your book? It's pretty good. My my cover artist. Let me actually get you guys his full name. Whoop. Pop back on over here. I it's like, whoop. I actually was showing you guys information, sensitive information. It's now out there on the whole internet. His first name is Giovanni. What's his last name? He ends with an M. I will put his contact information on Fiverr in the description for this video. Once we're done with the live stream, I'll put Giovanni's contact information there, so that way you guys, if you're interested in hiring him, he's a really, really cool guy out of the Philippines. You can hire him for your work. And he's definitely been a great artist to work with for my fairy tale stories. And he's pretty reasonably priced too. All right. Let's see here. Concraft says, for Burnout, if you go mangaka. Oh, oof. Hannah says, going indie. Yep. Let's see here. Hannah says, I'm just going to be a mangaka instead. Yes, going indie. Don't burn yourself out. Do not burn yourself out at all. Burnout sucks. Avoid it at all costs. Irina says, for the low price of free, you too can be annoyed with Amazon's platform. Exactly. Though publishers must have benefits which are worth it if so many mangakas use publishers. Yeah, here's the thing. Publishing with an actual publishing house, whether you're doing manga, comics, books, means that you're getting paid upfront for your work. They are going to go to bat for you. They guarantee you a certain amount of security. And on top of that, they are willing to work with you to help bring your vision to life. Granted, that means that they get more of a say in what happens, and so it might not always be the way that you want it to be, but you then get security. You get guaranteed pay. And that is what working with a publishing house gives you. That is your sacrifice for freedom and for the free. With what Irina says right here, yeah, for the free that Amazon provides, it means that you have to do everything the way that they want. Otherwise, they don't care what you make. You can either make the most awful or the most amazing thing ever, and they will do your work for free. Yay! So here it all is. We will save. And then we are going to preview. Because you have to if Amazon does not give you the chance to preview your work, it means that they refuse to let you publish your book. So you need to see that it allows you to do a preview. Because if you can't do a preview, you don't get a publish. All right, so here it is. This is what the book is going to look like. The spine might be a little bit fat, the borderline for the spine might be a little bit fat, but whatever. This is the dimensions that we're working with, and honestly, it's going to still look good. It's going to still look good when it comes out. So we're going to save and submit. Come on. There we go. And then it kicks you back here to this page. And as you see right here, the manuscript, the print version of the White Stake has been uploaded successfully, and the cover is uploaded successfully. We are processing your file, so basically saying like, okay, yeah, we want to make sure that everything's all good. Now then, did you use AI tools? No, I did not use any AI tools. It looks like you've uploaded a new manuscript or book cover. By clicking this, you confirm that the answers are indeed accurate. Looks like you made some changes to your manuscript or book cover. Please preview and approve these changes. So once everything is ready to go, you then click Launch Previewer. This will take a little while for it to build itself on up right here. So as building up, we'll quickly catch up. You guys can ask questions as we are waiting. Concraft Brazil says, yeah, I heard publishers can interfere, though I heard sometimes publishers and editors interference can help. From what I heard of the more popular parts of early Jujutsu Kaisen were editor ideas. Yes, yes, yes. Having an editor really does help. Having that outside influence can do wonders for a story. they can also really interfere with what you want to do. I have wanted to do a video about Odor of the Flame versus Hunter's Guild Red Hood, both made by the same mangaka. And Odor of the Flame is fun. It's a fun story. It lacks the depth and the interest of Hunter's Guild Red Hood. Because Hunter's Guild Red Hood was the mangaka being like, all right, we're going to talk about fairy tales. I'm going to give you guys fairy tales in a way you guys have never seen them before. And honestly, Hunter's Guild Red Hood is one of the reasons why I'm even writing these fairy tale stories. Because I was inspired. I was inspired by Kawaguchi and his take on fairy tales. I thought it was amazing. And what he was doing is kind of now a little bit of what I want to do. Not at the same level of insanity and over-the-top action and weirdness. But that's where I drew the inspiration from. And his series just died. It died on the vine because audiences in Japan did not like his bold, weird way of doing fairy tales. They wanted cookie-cutter shonen stuff. And so he went back, talked with an editor. His editor said, okay, then, people rejected Red Hood because it wasn't traditional shonen. Tell a traditional shonen story. Odor of the Red Flame adheres to traditional shonen tropes so concretely that it's derivative. As fun as it is, it's not as much fun as it could be because you can tell, especially if you've read Kawaguchi's other stuff, that this is him sanitized. Now then, with Jujutsu Kaisen, I guarantee that if Jujutsu Kaisen had been created the way that the original mangaka had wanted, it probably would not have taken off. And the same also actually for Spy Family. The mangaka for Spy Family was basically told by the editor, you need to make this more kid-friendly. He's like, I don't want to. But by making it more kid-friendly, by making Anya a little kid, that's what saved that story. What made it interesting to people and really hooked them in. And as it has progressed, Spy Family's become the more gritty action thriller that the mangaka had intended. He just had to go about it a different way. And so that's something to consider right there. Editors will sometimes, and actually I'd say often, give you the right kind of feedback that you need. Sometimes, though, an editor can also take away a lot of the life and creativity of a story. What I have heard from other authors is this. When your editor tells you to do something, what you should do is you should listen, take their advice, take their suggestions, and then make it your own. Don't just vomit back what they told you to do. Like if they told you, hey, this character feels a little flat, make them more dynamic. I think it would be really awesome if you gave that person a girlfriend. And you could be all like, yeah, that character does need to be more dynamic. But I don't want to write romance. That's not what the story's about. So what if I made this character more dynamic because they're actually trying to pay for grandma's medical bills by selling drugs on the streets? Voila, I made the character more dynamic. I just didn't give them a girlfriend. So that's a way that you can respect what the editor is telling you to do while still making the story your own. It's a bit of a balancing act. Okay. Let's see here. Hannah says, yeah, that's a shame. Yes, it absolutely is a shame what happened to Kawaguchi, unfortunately, and Red Hood. But Concraft says right here, so you have any tips for fairy tale based stories? I wanted to do a theme of people becoming avatars of fairy tales in an urban fantasy setting. Even if it won't get written now, having guidance for my fairy tale idea could help in the future. So I, Concraft, hold on to that, put a pin into it, because I want to answer that question, and I like the idea that you've got. We'll discuss it a little bit. But let me just show you guys real quick then what you'll be looking for if you decide to publish with Amazon. So here's the cover. You then toggle back and forth between what the different images or what the different pages will be. so I can hop back and forth for my niece Twiggy. Then we've got our images, we've got the writing all here. Now then, I did say earlier that I would tell you guys about the investments into the images. So this image right here cost me $60. There are 10 images in actually, no, let me take that back. This was actually $30. This was a $30 image. So for each one of these images, I paid $30. Woohoo! So there are 10 images, which meant $300 for the images in the book. For the cover, to get it to have it set up the way that it could then be used by Amazon, that would be approved by Amazon. Into this cover, I dedicated $220, which means that for the artwork alone for this book was an investment of over $500. Now, something to consider. I'm probably never going to make that investment back. Probably not off of this book, at least. So, again, that's something to consider when you are making your own stories. What are you able to dedicate? Now then, oh man, looking at this right here, looking at this. Yeah, not exactly pleased with what Amazon gives me. But again, I'm stuck with what Amazon gives me as far as the cover. Ultimately, what I'm going to have to do in the future is I'm just going to have to shell out more money to get the cover the way that I want. Now then, quality check. If you decide to publish to Amazon, all of your notifications for everything that you did wrong will appear over here. You can call on the hotline to get more insight if anything if you need help with anything. Chances are they are not going to help you one stinking bit. So what I can do, again, in the description for this video, I can actually give you guys the proper dimensions that you need to make sure that your book does get published by Amazon, because Amazon does not give you good guidelines into how things should be structured. And it took weeks to figure it out. It was a real old pain. And that goes for every single book. Again, streamlined. They want a specific way, no funny business. But as you can see right here, this book is all ready to go. All the text is good. The images are popping up. Woohoo. It's good stuff. So, when you feel ready with the book, click approve. You're kicked back over to here. Now then, here's your printing cost. $2.70. If I wish to make a profit off this book, I have to bear that in mind. So, we're going to save and continue and go to pricing. Here we are. All territories worldwide. I want my book to get into everyone's hands. Everyone's. Now then, this is where the greed comes in. Yes. Yes. Okay then. So, if I want to make money based off of this book, I need to well, let's see here. If I want to just break even, I have to actually set the price right here at $5.41. If you click on over here to expanded distribution, you want more people to be able to access it, then the price begins to go up even more. This is if Amazon is willing to sell their books to third parties, such as bookstores and the likes, then they want a guarantee that you're going to charge a certain amount of money. So looking at this right here, just looking at how much I would have to, again, if I want to make any money off of this, let's have a look. at Puss in Boots and the Dog Riddles. How much? So I charge $8 for Puss in Boots and the Dark Riddles. Let's say I want to keep that right there. $8. If I do $8, my royalties that I'm going to get through anything that's sold to a book through a bookstore, I'm only going to get 50 cents. Only get 50 cents per copy sold. Through Amazon, I'm going to make $1.30 sold. The printing costs $2.70. All other costs. So let's say right here, I get the full $1.30. So that's $4. That means that Amazon, for doing all their part, gets $4. They get a $4 profit off of making the book. This is another reason why people look at Amazon like they're super predatory. And again, I agree. But again, if you want to be able to do stuff for free, and I've already showed you guys just how, I've already told you guys, I spent $500 just on the artwork alone to get this book underway. Yeah, that's, if I were to work outside of Amazon, the cost would go up even higher to make this happen. And that's one of the reasons why you might end up putting up with Amazon's predatory features, because otherwise you do end up paying more money, and you're guaranteed, and you don't even have as good of a chance to sell your books as you do through Amazon. This is the reality of self-publishing. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people who want to go into self-publishing have their hearts broken and don't go very far, because this is the reality. When you look at the money, CDVA is here. Woohoo! Great to have you here, CDVA. So this is why I like talking about the money situation for the Gaslight District is really important, because even I, on a much smaller scale, this is the situation that I'm looking at. The costs, the benefits, and everything. Now then, I've had people tell me you sell at what you feel you are worth. Now, $8 definitely makes the book very accessible. Very accessible for anyone to buy and to read. And I want my books to be accessible. But let's see what happens when we set it at $10. At $10, I make through all sales at Amazon, $3.30. Woohoo! Fantastic. And in this case, then, if you actually start balancing out right there, wait a second. So 10. So you add the $2.70 to the $3.30. That's going to be $6. Amazon's still only making $4 off of me. Woohoo! Yeah, I make more money, man. Yes, you are making more money. And $10 is not much of a shift up from $8. Still is an affordable book, I would argue. I'm making more money. Awesome sauce. Awesome sauce. Now then, let's actually let's do a little bit of math. Let's start talking math here, because math is important in all of this. Congress says there is a reason most writers either write as a hobby or as a side job, with making money as a secondary thing. Exactly. A lot of people just write for the fun of it. Writing to make a living is hard. It really is, which is why, honestly, if you want to make that a reality, you need to get picked up by a publishing house, because it's very, very hard to do it independent-wise. Now, let's actually just do some math here. Math. Okay. So, let's do 500. So, let's do my total of $520 divided by 1.3. So, in order then for me to make back my investments on the book, I need to sell 400 copies before I actually start making a profit. Is 400 copies of a book sold possible? Absolutely it is. but it's very hard in such a saturated market. Now, what if I did by 3:30? Then I only need to sell 158 copies of my book in order to then start making a profit. Woohoo! Way easier than 400. So that's something then to consider. But again, it still is pretty hard to sell that many copies of any book if you are a self-published author. Now, having a little bit of fun right here. Let's say that I'm feeling particularly greedy. $15. $15 for each book. For each book. That's what someone's going to have to pay. Yes, I now make $6.30. Whew. I'd be able to make back my investment way faster. But if the book is only 142 pages long, if it's a novella, most people will not spend 15 bucks on an author that they don't know and for a novella of all things. So you can set this up where you can make some pretty good money. Does that but would it work? And that's honestly something to consider. So I gotta ask you guys this, and I definitely want your feedback on this. Should I just make the book $8? I gotta then sell 400 copies in order to break even, but the book becomes very affordable. What if it's $10? A little bit more expensive. Maybe someone won't exactly pay $10 for a novella, but it still is affordable, and I can make back my money way quicker. What do you guys think I should price my book at? $8 or $10? I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? This is honestly something that, as an author, I hem and haw about. Because I want my books to be affordable, but I also need to make money. So Irina says I go with 8. Now, why would you go with $8? Irina, why would you go that route? Because again, I know that I want my books to be very affordable, but then that does definitely mean that I have to sell even more. So it's discount integer and draws more eyes. Yes, something that's cheaper definitely means that it's probably more likely that someone's going to go with it. Jaime says, no, it's a stupid idea, but you can do 9. Yeah, sure. You have that happy middle ground area. What happens when it's $9? Then I make 180. CMA says 10 might be the way to go. $2 jump isn't huge, but just seeing 8 may be more pleasing because it draws more eyes, being single digits. Concrete says, though I'm no expert on this, so who knows? Now says, I don't know which one, but yeah, both have benefits, and it depends on how you treat your writing. Hobby, go with 8. Make money, go with 10. And I think that's pretty good insight right there, Common Craft. That $8 definitely bespeaks hobby. $10 kind of says a little bit more. It's only a $2 jump, but a $2 jump can be pretty significant. And right here, Irene says, personally, when I am hunting for a good book and don't have a big budget, I am drawn to books that don't end in 0 or 5. Yeah, and there is some psychology behind that, and also some psychology and based on how a book is priced in the first place. If a book is priced high, then people will immediately like, ooh, then it must be a good book. If it's priced low, then people immediately think it must be a bad book. That's another thing to consider. Alternatively, make it ludicrously high for no reason and hope someone buys it out of morbid curiosity. Oh my gosh, yeah, if I set the max to $250, yeah, I'd make a whole lot of stinking money off of that. I'd make $147. which would then mean that I only need to sell 4. Actually, I would only need to, I'd only need to sell 4 to make back my investments. But we want it to be reasonable. Now, here's another thing. Once you've priced your book, you're not locked into that price. Weirdly enough, again, the only thing that you're locked into is whether or not your book's a part of a series. Ugh. But otherwise, you can always go back and you can alter the price as you feel appropriate. Now then, me looking at this and having had the chance to sell my books at conventions, meet with other people. I've had book salesmen say, no, your book is worth more. Charge more for it. Again, that doesn't necessarily help and be like, what should I price it at? And within my own family, there's all different opinions on how expensive the book should be. So, let's see here. Conquest says, alternatively, okay, I already got that. I've heard that prices that end in 9 are considered cheaper by default for potential buyers. Psychology thing. And Meg says, hey there, Mr. Lars and friends. It's been a while. Nice to see you all again. It is also great to have you here, Mimic. It's always great to have you here for a live stream. So let's try something else here. Let's get a little silly. Whoop. Let's get a little silly. What if we did $9.99? $9.99, cheaper than 10, does not end in a 0 or a 5, and it looks cheaper. You know what? Let's try this out. Let's try it with a lot of you guys have said right here. $9.99. I make back my money a little bit faster if I sell really well. No guarantee of that. And then it doesn't end in a 0 or a 5. It's cheaper than 10 by 1 cent. Let's try out 99.05. You know what? Just for kicks and giggles. Well, let's have a look at what 99.05 would get me. That would make me $56.73 for every sale on Amazon, and through secondary people, $36.92. So yeah, I make pretty decent money off of that. Amazon would make over $30. So I'd be coming out on top there, but who is going to spend nearly $100 on just a novella, unless the thing were a collector's item? So yeah, you know what? Let's try $9.99. Just let's try it on out. $9.99 is less than 10. It's within an affordable range. Maybe the psychology might play a little bit of an extra role into who actually ends up buying this book. And we'll see. We'll see. The interesting thing, so again, and here's something important to actually note here. The printing price is still $2.70. If I want to buy copies of my own book in order to sell them myself at conventions and the likes, I only have to pay $2.70 for each book, and then the cost of the shipping, which means that I'm already paying way less than anyone who buys my book directly from Amazon, which is nice for me as the author, especially if I want to take my books to conventions and the likes, or to book fairs. So it's that's good. So that's good. That's good to note. As if you wish to publish through Amazon, you do have the ability to get your books for cheap. You don't just have to rely on Amazon to make things happen. Yeah, we're doing just a little tomfoolery, for the fun of it. What you put up here for your main market will then be altered for every other market. So all these other numbers that you see here are auto-generated based on what the dollar is doing. If I were to have said that I was selling primarily in Germany, then I would be putting the euro up here, the euro value, and then it would be configured for all the other markets. So there you have it. Congress says the psychology thing, from what I understand, is that 9 always brings 10 to mind, thus forcing the person to compare to a higher price first and making the current one seem cheaper by comparison. Arian says 9.17. Ah, yes. But yeah, let's try out $9.99. And again, I can always change this price as I see fit. Either setting it lower or setting it higher. And once you got there, it requests a book proof. Yeah, I can do that. But it says right here, you can order author copies once your book is available on Amazon. It can take up to 72 hours for your book to be available for purchase on Amazon. So the moment that I push this right here, publish your paperback book, it might take a while. So if any of you are like, man, I want to support Lars, I want to get a copy of The White Snake, it might take up to 72 hours before you have the chance to do that. But if you wish to support what I do, and if you want to read a very interesting take on one of the lesser known Brothers Grimm fairy tales, then within 72 hours, should this be approved, you guys can buy a copy. And because there's been nothing that's been flagged along the way, unless Amazon, when they preview this, are like, oh my gosh, this book is the most evil, vile thing on the face of the earth, chances are this book is going to be approved. CV says you could always do a fake sale that goes on forever. I know. It's always an option. And sometimes I actually have some books that Amazon without my permission now sell for free. It's kind of annoying, but yeah, it's what happens when you work with Amazon. So let us publish the paperback. Dun, 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 dun. Save is successful. Yes, there we are. Now then, since right here you can start your ebook now. So whenever I want, I can then make this an ebook. Woohoo! Your book will be checked against KDP guidelines. During this time, you won't be able to make changes to your book. After passing review, we'll send you an email. It can take up to 72 hours before your book becomes available on Amazon. For low-content books, it can take up to 10 business days. Books with a scheduled release date will be made available on the date that you have specified. Now, I've said mine will be available the moment it goes live, so within 3 days, this book should be available. Yay! All right. So, that was that. Woohoo! So, any other questions before we then move on to the lesson and wrap up the live stream for tonight? Concraft says, turns out this was the day Amazon had their intern who was raised by those families that considered D&D evil and was put to review books. No! Then Mick says $9.99 is not bad at all. You could have amped up the price even higher if you wanted. So this is pretty great, honestly. Yeah, again, I wanted my books to be affordable. There are other people who, for the same size books, will charge up to $25 or even $30. I try to keep my books all priced within that $8 to $15 range. Though for some of my weightier books, I do make them closer to $20. Sai, get out your notebooks, guys. Ah, yes, lesson time is nearly here. Then Han says, wait, is manga allowed? Also comics? To my knowledge, it is possible, but again, you are stuck with Amazon's parameters. Because I've never tried publishing a comic with Amazon, I can't say for certain, Hannah. What I would say is we'll need to do some research and see if it is possible. If it is, what are the parameters? And are they worth it, especially within your creative desires? Because, for instance, there's a couple of books that I definitely want to publish that are going to be like way more interactive is not the right word, but I want them to be way more bombastic and artistic. And I literally will not be able to do that with Amazon. So for those books, I'm going to have to turn to other publishers. So the more creative you want to get, probably the less you want to rely on Amazon. If you're able to work within the parameters that Amazon does set for comics, if they do publish them, then that might be something to consider. So Comic says, hey, Lars, can we talk about my fairy tale urban fantasy book idea? You asked me to put a pin on it. Thank you very much for reminding me, Comic Craft Brazil. And I do actually intend, at Shade's request from last week, to do a dedicated lesson to urban fantasy. But let me already address what you had said before. So let me... CVA says, you motivated me to start scripting my webcomic story idea while starting film school in another month. Awesome, CVA. And congratulations to getting into film school. I hope that you have an amazing time and that it helps you out a lot. So let me scroll up to... Meanwhile, Brandon Sanderson is over there like being a freaking machine. It doesn't look like it when you follow a single series of his. Then you notice how many series he's writing all at once. Yes, I mean, I kind of do the same, but I'm nowhere near as prolific as Sanderson. Holy cow. Okay, so do you have any tips for a fairy tale based on story, for a fairy tale based stories? I want to have them do a theme of people becoming avatars of fairy tales in an urban fantasy setting. So let's already start with an urban fantasy setting. Common Craft. Here is my personal take, and I know this goes against the grain, but I'm going to give it anyway. Urban fantasy fights with one hand tied behind its back. Urban fantasy is nowhere near as cool most of the time as it could be. And the reason for that is that because most urban fantasy writers are trying to make what they have written into their urban fantasy not break the reality of this world. And because of that, they normally tend to not be as creative as they could be. A very good example of how I think urban fantasy should be done in terms of its boundless potential while still not breaking the world is the book Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Yes, I know that Neil Gaiman is right now persona non grata for a very good reason. You don't have to support him in order to enjoy a good book. And yes, I know buying the book means that you're giving him some money. You could go to the library and get the book that way. Neverwhere, even though it's a more adult-oriented book, is incredible. This world that lives just underneath London, doing all of its crazy things with entire kingdoms, passageways, monsters, special bazaars that happen within the museum and stuff like that, within malls, that is all there and it's all happening. And the only reason why the normal people of London don't see it is because they haven't actually signed the paperwork or whatever that is in order to interact with these people. So as a result, they cannot interact with the world that is happening literally around them or under their feet. That is a great way of having a fantasy world set within our world where it's like, hey, if you signed the paperwork, you could do this. Or if you got cursed, then you could do this. Other great examples include Hilda. So if you don't want to support Neil Gaiman, but you still want to see good urban fantasy, Hilda on Netflix. Such a good urban fantasy story. So stinking good. Where there's all this stuff happening that would almost break the world. And what I like about Hilda is that in Hilda, the people acknowledge that all of these things are actually do exist and can happen, but they just they decide to ignore it, which is a very common thing. People will ignore stuff that's just too weird for them. That happens all the time. So that's one example. Fablehaven is not technically urban fantasy, but there are moments of urban fantasy in Fablehaven, and the Candy Shop Wars, also done by Brandon Mole, is fantastic, because in Fablehaven, when people see the Fantastic, unless they have signed the treaty that allows them to see magical things, or they have to like drink special magical milk, all the fantastical stuff that they see are just random things, like satyrs are just goats. A titan destroying a town is just simply a tornado to their eyes. A dragon attacking a town is simply just a spontaneous combustion. Boom. So I will put in here Fablehaven and Candy Shop Wars by Brandon Mole are great examples too of what I think urban fantasy should be. Granted, again, this is me saying this because I feel that the moment you start tapping into fantasy, you need to say, I can do anything within the rules that I have set. And if I want to go big, I should be allowed to go big. If I want, there should be titans living in the American capital and like eating the politicians, and people don't realize it. If I want, I can have it where, like in Dante's Inferno, demons have taken over the body of the Pope and control the church that way. And only if you go into hell do you realize what the truth is. Stuff like that. You should be allowed to get very, very creative. That is my very first, word of advice to you, Common Craft. Don't just allow the fact that your story takes place in an urban setting to hinder how creative you can be. Be as creative as you want. And if it's something that's world shattering to like our logic and understanding, just say, oh yeah, they haven't signed the paperwork yet. Duh. Or they haven't had the magic milk yet. Duh. Or humans, or regular humans, can only see it on a certain full moon. Duh. Or you have to be bitten by a vampire. Duh. Like, you get to make the rules. And all of the weirdness is just people just accept it, or people choose to ignore it, or are magically forced to ignore it. Urban fantasy can be way more creative. Too many authors are all like, oh, well, you see the vampires. Yeah, the vampires. Obviously, they can only come out at night. So that means that they're all like, they all just go to the bars and they party real hard, where they then find drunk victims and they drink their blood. Yeah, okay, that just makes good sense. Makes good sense. Oh, and because they're all vampires and they've lived forever, they're all super rich. Yay. And they don't really ever think beyond that. If I'm going to do an urban fantasy story with vampires, for instance, I would want to have, okay, well, what do vampires actually eat, for instance? How do people not realize that vampires are around them? What resources do the vampires have? What are their best hunt? Where do they hunt? How is their society set up? Yada, yada, yada. Get creative. Get creative. With a fairy tale, what I would say is this, that if you've got people becoming the avatars of various fairy tales, you need to explain, Common Craft, why people start becoming the avatars of these fairy tales. Why and what is the purpose? So let me put that in here. For your avatar of fairy tales idea, why and what is the purpose behind people becoming the new fairy tale characters? That is what I want you to be focusing on. And then from there, what I think you should then do is you then need to think of, okay, so what is the fairy tale world within the urban setting? What is the fairy tale world within the urban setting? How do people interact with it? Or why is it that they don't interact with it? You come up with the rules for the fairy tales. And then you just start developing your characters from there. You say I have a basic idea on that already, but it is still a bit vague. Yeah, so you're going to need to do some world building. You're going to need to do some crafting. And we can actually have some fun with that next week when the lesson will be on urban fantasies. Actually, yeah, we still will do it for next week. I might have to change the day just because I'm going to go help celebrate a friend's birthday. So it might not be next Friday. It could be next Thursday. We'll just have to see. Now then, let me catch up with what some of you guys have been saying here. Excuse me. Congress says, oh yeah, I'd never taken into account that account before. Possibility of breaking the setting never entered my mind before. Hannah says, I'm hurt because I love Coraline. Yeah, Coraline's a great story. It just sucks that Neil Gaiman just ends up being a real piece of trash. That's the sad thing. He's a great writer with some great insights. It just sucks that he decided to be a jerk and a horrible predator. The Neil Gaiman thing, I remember a discussion about how in some of his popular stories weren't written solely by him, so trying to pretend those were bad also affect those other people indirectly. Yes, I agree. Ooh, I love Hilda. Yes, Hilda's great. I love the animated show. I love Coraline too. Crying, broken hearts. With Hilda, my interpretation was less that people ignore it, and more like the fantastic stuff was mostly in the background. It is amazing, but it's also like growing up in a town next to a volcano. Yeah, eventually you're just like, it's a volcano, so what? It's mundane to them and fades into the background of life. The Kane tabletop RPG is like that. CVA, in my series, magic is simpler, generic. If anyone knows it, it takes influence from the anime Magi and is this sort of energy of life. The focus will be more on the history of magic in the world. Ooh, very interesting. As a historian, I like that idea. Comcraft, another thing that admittedly happens more with zombies. The monster magic is treated as if media never thought about it before. I know, I hate that! No one would ever think of the dead rising to life. Really, one of the most ancient concepts in humanity. What if the dead came back? No one ever thought of this before? Give me a break. Comcraft, I have a basic idea on that already, but it is still a bit vague. Okay, yeah. So how your world works. So you need to have your rules for your urban fantasy world. You need to have your reason for why people are changing, and what that all entails. You need to understand why the urban worlds and the fantasy world, like why they're separated or why they're connected. You need to have basic rules for that. And then once you have that world building all done and those rules established, it then comes down once again to the characters. The characters. The world building is really interesting, but we need to experience that world building through your characters. Otherwise, it all starts coming apart. My current idea was that myths and fairy tales are like energy born of culture that want to take in new forms to get interpreted in new forms and interactions, and they have faded a bit due to modern culture, but are coming back now that old and new symbols have destabilized and the process restarted once more. Okay, then. Comic Craft Brazil, I am going to recommend a manga to you because of your lines of thinking for this. This is another urban fantasy story. My hesitation to immediately recommending the manga, like I'd recommend the anime, but the anime definitely sanitizes things a little bit and goes in a different direction than the manga. The manga's got some explicit stuff in it, but if you're okay with that, Mysteries, Maidens, and Mysterious Disappearances is another recommendation for you. Because, especially from what you're saying right here, in Mysteries, Maidens, and Mysterious Disappearances, this urban fantasy manga is about how folk tales in Japan come to a city that does not have a god or patron spirit. And that's something that's important within Japan, is that there's always some sort of god spirit or monster or legend attached to every single town or city, no matter how big or how small. There are all kinds of spirits everywhere in Japanese culture. But in this story, due to climate change and weird things happening, miraculously, there is an area that comes up out of the ocean, a new space. And so a city has been very quickly built into this new space, and it does not have any gods or spirits. And so therefore, all the gods and spirits that are looking for a new home or looking to dominate or expand flood into the city. And based on any faith or belief that is given to them, they rapidly begin growing in power because there is nothing to balance them. And so the main characters are basically dealing with all of these overpowered folk tales that are coming to life and haunting and cursing or kidnapping people. And so they have to solve all of these mysteries and mysterious disappearances. And there's lots of maidens. No, it is not a harem story. Your main characters are actually are interested in each other. The explicitness happens because the mangaka is all like, you know what? Nakedness sells. And so, yeah, you get nudes in the manga. That's why I say it's explicit. Oh boy. But yeah, but again, if you're okay with that, it's a very interesting story and kind of is, I think, in the same vein of what you are interested in. So again, if you're interested in looking into that and you're okay with it, I would recommend it. If not, then that's okay, because there's other, like I've already given other instances of, I think, other really great urban fantasies. Fablehaven also kind of deals with that, whereas in Fablehaven, at one point when like dragons, for instance, get loose and they're ready to just kind of start wrecking and everything, the dragons are like, wait a second, why are people not running in terror of me? And it's because the dragons suddenly realize that no one can see them as dragons. They're seen as like a storm or as a spontaneous combustion, spontaneous explosion. Dragons are no longer seen as dragons because people no longer believe in them as dragons. And so, as a result of that, a lot of these fairy tale monsters have to find some kind of way of convincing people that they exist and that they should be feared, which is what the main characters are trying to stop, because they do not want the rest of the world to again start believing in these fairy tale monsters, because if that's the case, it would give these fairy tale creatures way more power to interact with them and then break the world. Harem stories, when I mentioned the idea of polyamory. Oh, couldn't be us. Hold on a second here. I gotta let a very hungry cat out. Go forth, be free, fat one. Ah, there goes honey. All right. So Comic Craft, I hope that gives you some ideas of what you can already start thinking on as far as that story goes. And we'll cover more when we do the lesson on urban fantasy. Okay, so let's start getting to the lesson. Comic says another concept I wanted to use was that a fairy tale becomes almost like a past life for the avatars. The fairy tales are mainly bonded to people who either match or contrast the spirit of the character being incarnated. Very interesting. Very interesting. I like that. I really do. That's a cool idea. There's so much that you can do with that idea. Okay, so finishing well. This is, again, a request from TV account. I don't see them there in the chat. Hopefully they pop on in. If not, this will at least stand as something that they and anyone else can come back to and have a look at. So, finishing well. Our goals. Learn to know when to end a project and how to temper expectations. Equally hard to starting a story is knowing when and how to end it. Eventually, every project must come to a close. It should be a fulfilling and rewarding experience, but how do we achieve that? That is what this lesson is about. So, first off, we must begin with the end in mind. We all write and create differently, but it is important to have an idea from the beginning of where you will end. So, for instance, will this book be 80,000 words or 40,000 or 400,000 words long? That's a big difference, and that's something you should bear in mind. Will my show have 8 episodes or 24 episodes? Will my comic span 5 volumes or 50? Things will change as we write and create, but you need to have at least some concept of where everything is going to end up by the end. How much are you going to do? Because this will give you a simple framework for what your ending should be like. I'm going to end the story like when I reach these many words. For instance, one of the projects I'm currently working on, I'm saying 80,000 to 100,000 words. It shouldn't be more than 100,000, and I would like it to be around 80,000 at minimum. Once I've reached 80,000 words, I should be thinking about how do I want to wrap this up? Because I've got 20,000 more words to go if I so wish, but cannot be any more than 100,000 words. The ending to that book might change drastically from what I currently have, but my end point is already right there. No more than 100,000 words. And that already then gives me a very good mile marker to know once I've hit this point, I should be thinking about the end, whatever that end is going to be. Now, hopefully they can watch it later if they can't catch up on time. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I try to leave up all of these live streams for anyone who wishes to check them out. Oh yeah, there are some fanfics I have to catch up on. They're very big. One I wanted to get back to reading is still updating since 2012. Wow. So it shocked me to see it after wondering how it ended. Yeah, it's still going. Who knows how it will end? Now, refine your ending as you create. Because things will change as you write, it is important to constantly evaluate where and how you want to finish your story. For instance, my flagship series, The Legend of the Ten Lords, has undergone several major changes. It was originally supposed to be about Ben and Jessica becoming heroes who will save the day. It then expanded to include Lagerblad and Armina, and as more characters have been inserted into the story, characters that I never intended to write originally, such as Nessa and Tori, the story just got big. And so what was originally supposed to be a 5-book saga became 6. So yeah, things changed. Now, this is going to happen to you as well as you write and as you create. And that's okay. Things are going to change because your story continues to evolve as you write. That's totally normal. But what is important is that you eventually say, all right, that's enough. If I do much more, it's going to just get too big and too messy. And if you don't know when that point is, that is where you have a writing group, which if you don't have your own writing group, that's what we at Camille's Harem are here for. We can be your writing group if you need that. So don't be afraid to reach out to us with your questions. Now, there's also the editing. Because once you've said, okay, I'm going to do 5 volumes, or I'm going to do a 3-hour movie, or I'm going to do 24 episodes, or I'm going to do 200,000 words. Once you've reached that, you're going to have to continue to edit your story, which will also change things as you go along, to at least to a certain degree. But you need to edit and review, and you need to edit and review, and you need to edit and review. You need to edit. Your story is not its best at its first draft, its second, or its third. It continues to evolve and get better the more you work at it. But understand this. These are 2 things you need to keep in mind as you edit, though. You will never be perfect. No, you will never be perfect. Your story will never be perfect. Not even the great J.R.R. Tolkien, who is arguably the best fantasy author of all time. Not even he was perfect. And The Lord of the Rings is about as close to perfection as you're ever going to get, but it's still not perfect. And that's okay. Number 2, you want your story to be the best that your skills will achieve at the time. That's important to note. Because you will grow and improve as a creator as you continue to work. But at a certain point, like, you can't just work on a story for 15 years and then publish it because you're like, the story idea that I had in mind 15 years ago, it is finally ready. That's silly. That's dumb. If you've been working on it for 15 years, that's too long. Honestly, that's too long. It might be an idea that you've mulled over for 15 years, but at a certain point, you have to say enough is enough, and you need to just commit. Commit to ending it. Commit to ending that project and releasing it however you wish to release it. What you'll find is that, honestly, though, finding that endpoint in time is hard to gauge. Ultimately, knowing when you've achieved the end will be a combination of your own satisfaction, going with your gut, and getting feedback from trusted people. If your trusted people are all telling you that your story is good to go, but you're like, I don't feel satisfied. Sometimes you just got to listen to what other people are saying. True, you might not be satisfied, but other people want your story to be out there because they think it's really good and it's ready to go. Do not be like Patrick Rothfuss and just be like, it's not yet ready. It's not yet ready. It's not yet ready. Dude, at a certain point, you got to commit. Now, granted, he's got more issues with getting his next book out than just that, but I've already talked about that in another video. Ultimately, you just gotta do it. You gotta commit, you gotta do it. If you wanted to get your story out there in the first place, at a certain point in time, you gotta grit your teeth and just get the story out there. Conqueror says, I've been wanting to start with fanfics because it would help me get used to writing stuff other people read and get used to criticism. Well, if it will be serialized in the websites of my choice. Gerson would know how that is. LOL. Yes, I'll go Gerson. Now then, Comicraft, that's actually a great idea, and I did the same thing with some of my stories, or at least with getting better at writing. Fan fictions ended up being a way for me to improve as a writer, or to test some ideas that I was a little bit standoffish about, but I was interested in trying. Fan fiction was a way for me to explore that, and to get used to writing dialogue because I could rely on how already established characters spoke. So I just had to get used to that and make that way of speaking my own. But yeah, if you are writing or creating or drawing with the intent of putting it out there into the world, at some point you're just going to have to do it and commit. And it was like this for me with The Legend of the Ten Lords. I knew that the book wasn't perfect when I released Knights of Halicruz, but it was the best I could do with my skill level at the time. I was so exhausted with that book, and I knew if I worked even more on it, I would eventually come to hate it. But I was loving what I was doing with book 2 and with book 3, and I was already planning out books 4, 5, and 6 at this point. And so I knew I just had to do it. It wasn't the best. It still is not the best. I'm like, oh, that book. Oh. But now that I'm working on book 6, I'm right now reading through the first draft for book 6. I don't know what magic water I drank for draft 1 of book 6, because it's one of the few times for my first draft I'm like, holy crud, this is actually good. I don't have to change much. Oh, that's magical. It'll probably get worse when I get into the middle of the book, but right now it's right now the first few chapters are really good. But yeah, I need to just take that next step. Otherwise, I'd still be stuck in book 1, and I'd probably be hating the series and thinking I'm a horrible author. At some point, you just got to do it. So the secret is to have a psychic friend Palpatine by your side saying, do it. And then you're saying, do or do not. Not stop until you get over the hang-up? Yes, that's what your writing group is there for. To help you figure out when you are ready to finally release your story. Because chances are you're probably more ready than you expect, if you've been putting in the work to finish it. So that's pretty much it. I mean, everyone's story is going to be different. First of all, you actually have to finish the story and make sure that you edit and review to get it to be the best that it can be with your skill level, talk about it with other people, and when you feel ready, and when they say that they are ready for your story, release it. That will change from book to book, but that's the best advice I can give. And you will eventually figure out where that is for that particular story, and it will change. Sometimes I'm like, okay, the third draft is actually really good. I'm ready to go. Other times I'm like, oh my gosh, this third draft sucks. God, I need like 7 more drafts. It all depends on what you're writing and how it's going at the time. Now, once you've released your book out there into the world, and we just did that. You guys were there with me when I published The White Snake, which should be available within 72 hours or so. We've already talked about how much money, how many copies it would have to sell for me to make my money back. With the book being set at $9.99, I need to sell at least 158 copies in order for me to make my investments back. Honestly, I probably will not sell that many copies of this book unless I become a very famous author. That's just the truth of the matter. And that can be very painful to some people. Like, oh my gosh, why are you then going through all this effort? This is where tempering expectations in a healthy way comes through. And for all of you who are right now watching, I really, really want you to do this. Right now, I want you to imagine where you want to be when your story is done. How does it look? How famous will you become because of the story? How wealthy is the story going to make you? How happy are you because you have made this story? Take a moment. Take a moment and think about it. Imagine it. I want you guys to see it in your mind's eye. As you're imagining this, I will share with you guys what I want to see, where I hope to be with one of my books. When I publish Whitefire, when I finally get around to finishing and then publishing that book, I want it to be a bestseller. I want it to be center stage on a table somewhere at like Barnes & Noble. And that when I walk by, I see someone there who's checking out the book. It's like, oh, cool, look at this big book. They open it up and they see all these pictures of dragons and maps, music in the book. And they're just like, whoa, this is different. And they're going to then run off, they're going to buy a copy. I want that book to sell 1 million copies. I want to be right up there with Brandon Sanderson, George R. R. Martin, J.K. Rowling, and I want that book to begin revolutionizing how dragons are utilized in fantasy. I want my name to be right up there with the greats. And with 1 million copies at least sold with the first book, a New York Times bestseller, beloved around the world, where I'm now so busy that I don't know what to do with my time. And I got all this money that I can then afford the house that I want. I can set aside plenty of money for retirement already just off this one book, so I can write for pleasure for the rest of my life. I got money that I can then set aside for my nieces and nephews when they go to college. I want to be invited to all kinds of conventions. I want people to ask me questions. I want to be able to share my insights, my experiences with others. And I hope that when I then tell other people as an author of this great book that other people love, that when I tell my point to that person who's asked a question about what should I publish, and I should say yes, because you need your story. Your story needs you, and the world needs your story. I want it so that way when I say that, it's not just to a handful of people on YouTube who are like me, who really want to be creators and tell their stories to the whole world and just change things, or just the excitement of creation. I want thousands of people around the world to hear those words, to take that and go running with it, and to tell amazing stories that transform the world stories that I could never tell, that only they can tell. And that at least I can smile and say, I played some small part in that person being amazing. That's my dream. That is what I want. Now, you can share what your dream is in the chat, or you can keep it to yourself. It's fine either way. But what I want you to do with that dream that you've imagined firmly in your mind, I want you to take that dream and I want you to put it on a mental trophy shelf there in the back of your mind. One day, that's going to be me. Because it's nice to have this goal. It's great to have this dream. And it is okay for you to take the time to daydream about it. But the moment that you're done daydreaming, you're going to take that dream and you're going to set it on that trophy shelf and you're going to turn your back on it and get to work and step into reality with me. Dreams are great and you should never let go of your dreams. But you need to learn how to balance that dream with what reality is. And we're going to start getting into some of that reality. Comcraft says, I hopefully want to have loyal readers in thousands, type of story that would spark talks and discussions online. In my own fandom, it's something that I would have to be happy to read myself, a story that I can show my younger siblings and get them amazed with how cool I am. I wish my story would be the type that would be good enough that it could get adapted into a comic and a cartoon and a game. Awesome. That's a beautiful dream. That is a fantastic dream, Comicraft. And I hope that you get it. Now, step with me into reality. Here's your chances of the following. People, so you will not be recognized by more than a few people. You will not make a living doing what you love. That goes for most people. In fact, you might lose a lot of money and opportunities doing what you love. Chances are you will never become famous. And you, in many cases, will be embarrassed about your own creative works. There's the reality. That's it. This is where most people get dashed on the rocks and throw in the towel. But I don't want you to do that. This is the reality. There's no magical way to change this. What is right there on that screen, that's the reality. But that doesn't have to mean that you have failed, nor does that mean that you're going to get wrecked. This is what tempering expectations truly means. To understand what you're getting yourself into. To have your dreams, but understand that your dreams must face reality. And by understanding reality, you better understand what you should value and what you are going to be actually capable of doing. And keep those expectations in mind so that if any of them get subverted, it is a major and welcome surprise. Yeah, absolutely. But also keep this in mind because if the world doesn't turn the way that you wish, at least you now know why. Now, here's something that you need to ask yourselves. And I know I brought this up before, but I'm bringing it up again. Brandon Sanderson, are you okay with that? And that's not like a challenge like, are you okay with that? No, you're going to succeed. Buy my book to find out how to succeed. Yeah, stupid pyramid scheme. Go away, you. Brandon Sanderson, when he was first getting started, and this is where this guy is an absolute machine. The guy had already written like 12 books. 12 books that were rejected. And he got to a point where he was all like, wow, am I okay with this? Am I okay with that? I just keep getting turned down again and again and again. What if I never get published? I have all these stories I want to write. And he asked himself, am I okay with this if I'm the only person who ever reads these stories? And his answer was yes. If the only person through his entire life who would ever read his stories was just him, that was going to be enough. And it gave him the courage to keep going. And then it's one of those things like, and then the next book, yay! His next book was Elantris. It did not make him famous, but it got published. The next book was Warbreaker. Did not make him famous, but it put food on the table. Then came Mistborn. And then he began to become famous. And then he got very lucky and got to finish the Wheel of Time series. So there's definitely some luck to it. Luck plays a huge role into how successful we are. And that's just not a harsh reality. But if you're okay with only yourself being the one to profit off of this, and what I mean by profit, that you are enjoying what you're doing, then that's okay. Yeah, make something I would like to read. Yeah. And for me, what I've come to discover is that I need to write because my stories can finally take shape. For so long in my life, I always had a fantastic imagination that did all kinds of weird and crazy things. But I never wrote any of it down. And there's so many stories that are now forgotten to me. I just have little snippets of them. And so my imagination just always wandered off to its own thing. And in many ways, throughout a lot of my life, I have felt very disconnected, very hard. It's been very hard for me to connect with people. And writing has helped me to connect, at the very least with myself and with my own situation. And it's helped me to connect with other people. I may never get famous. I may never get wealthy off of writing, but by golly, writing has led me to some of my best friends, the people in Camille's Harem. Writing has helped me to help other people who have been going through really hard times. It's only been a couple of people, but holy cow, to help someone out through my own writing, that's worth way more than $1,000. Easy. To be able to write, to overcome some of my own personal baggage, and to finally set it down and say, enough is enough. And to move on, absolutely worth it. And so even if my writing has only been for me or for a handful of other people, it's been worth it. What Brandon Sanderson has said is absolutely true. And at one point, about 2 years ago, I was feeling absolutely crushed by just the expectations. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be famous. I wanted this YouTube channel to be huge. I wanted to be selling so many books. And we're not there. I may never get there. But hearing him talk about how are you okay with it just being for you? And then I'm like, yes, because writing has benefited me far more than just monetarily. And so I'm okay with that. Now, let's talk about it even further. You need to find fulfillment in your amazing accomplishments. First off, if you finish your story, you have already beaten the craziest odds. Only 30 out of every 1,000 people who start writing ever finish their stories, at least according to selfpublishingus.com. If you manage to finish a story, you will astound 99.9% of the world's population because they believe that can't be done. Because there are so many people out there who've wanted to write, who began writing, and never finished their stories. I've met so many of them. And when I tell them that I haven't just published one book, but I've published 10, And tonight, as of tonight, if the book goes through, that's 11 books published. That floors people. They can hardly imagine it. I'm like a god to them. Not quite. But it already, if you can finish your own story, you have beaten the odds. You are one of the best authors out there because you finished. And that's something to be very proud of. Another thing to consider is this. As you write, you will gain skills and knowledge, and you will have gone on an incredible personal journey. That's absolutely true. I've learned and gained so much from writing that has absolutely nothing to do with money or fame. I am a smarter, more connected person because of it. And I've gone through so many personal journeys that helped me out just by writing alone. And it's an incredible thing when just one person reads and likes your story. That is worth so much. And the joy of a job well done to the best of your abilities is just so satisfying, so calming, so therapeutic, so good. And honestly, just creating something is in and of itself a great treasure. And it's a reward by itself. So bear that in mind. These right here, this has absolutely nothing to do with money or fame or how people regard you. This is mostly just within yourself. And if you even get just that one person, though, who likes your story, it's amazing. It's so good. So yeah, find the fulfillment in your amazing accomplishment, because if you can finish your story, you are already one of the best. Now then, after that, it's a matter of being the best among the best, or at least being happy with being among the best and doing your best work. Let's see here. Conquer says, yeah, so many creators I know became famous from a last-minute fluke. Absolutely. Luck plays such a huge role in this. I remember how Scott Cawthorne apparently created FNAF thinking it would be a fluke. And on another, yeah, I've heard that. On another series, Final Fantasy was called that because it was made to be the creator's last game. Success on any creative venue is basically a lottery. So first focus on more realistic accomplishments. Yeah, first focus on finishing your story. And finishing your story alone already benefits you so much. Like, yep, before anyone else could love it and appreciate it, you have to love it first. Absolutely, Mimic. Amen to that. Got to remember, it says Craft, a lot of people paint for themselves, sculpt for themselves. So why not write for themselves? Absolutely. I'm amazed as, to be honest, I want my humor to be a landmine. A landmine in a good way or in a bad way? Now then, what about achieving your dreams? Because we can temper our expectations and we can focus on how we benefit personally from this. But really, we want to succeed, don't we? Don't we? So in order to do that, first, finish your dang story. Finish it. Once you have done that and gone through all the editing that you need to do in order to make it work, you must get your story out there, and then you must network. Reach out to other people and ask them to help you in promoting your story. Just as Mimic has said right here, before anyone else can love it and appreciate it, you have to love it first. You must love your story in order to convince other people to love it. And when you do that, they will become your biggest fans and will promote your story for you. You need to get involved in conventions, competitions, fairs, writing groups, etc. I know for a lot of us that's very hard to do. But you do need to get out there. You need to connect with other people. Tell others what you do. Be honest. I'm an author. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a sculptor. I'm a painter. I do comics. I do manga. I'm right now in the process of making my own indie animated show. I'm writing a book. Tell people what you're doing. Because as you do that, you will gain people's interest. Just this week at my job, I was I was working to fix an Ethernet cable. So I'm out there in the hot sun, I'm there squatting in the hot sun with actually I was kneeling down because since my feet are reconstructed, it actually makes squatting very difficult. So I'm kneeling on a hot slab of cement in the sun, in rattlesnake country, working on an Ethernet cable with this guy as we're trying to get a camera ready. And so we're just talking. I let him know what else to do, because he's like, hey man, what did you do before this? And I said, well, I was a teacher, but I'm also an author and a YouTuber. And he's like, oh, what do you like to write? And I'm like, I love fantasy. He's like, oh, what kind of fantasy? And I say what I do, and he's like, I love dark and mysterious fantasy. So we're out there and we're just talking, and he asked me a little bit more about my books, and then I just start telling him all this stuff. And I don't think the guy will ever buy a book off of me, but I got to tell him about what I do. I got all animated and excited about it, which made him really happy. And then I gave him one of my business cards that have some of my books on it. And yeah, even if I never sell a book to this guy, it was a great experience. And the guy is now like super friendly with me at work. So, and it's amazing what can happen when you tell people about what you do. Now, after that, it all comes down to luck. You can be a published author, a publishing house took you up. You can have written a great story. It could be like Tolkien levels great. And then it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Just look at Firefly. Firefly is a great show. And the luck of the die destroyed it before it could even finish one season. Sucks. And then you got something dumb like 50 Shades of Grey. There are so many better smutty stories out there. Why does 50 Shades of Grey get to be the one that gets all the interest? Don't know. Game of Thrones. Not picked up or really well known until the series was well underway. And HBO did honestly, the first season is honestly a cheap adaptation of the first book, because HBO was all like, hey, guess what? There's a lot of sex in this book, and we're HBO. We're all about that. And then, boom, it becomes a sensation. And not because of the sexiness, but because people liked the creative story and world that George R. R. Martin had created. Even though I personally have many, many words to say about how I think that story is incredibly overrated, people loved it. Luck was on his side, or suddenly swung to his side, when honestly, for most of Martin's history, most of his professional history, the guy was living from paycheck to paycheck, basically bumming good graces off of other people that he happened to network through because he played D&D. That's basically it. All right, so I'm catch up with what some of you guys said right here. I've managed to break my first mental block writing literally anything in public spaces. It took so many years before I managed to write comments until I decided just to do it, and a lot of people liked some of the comments I wrote. So I got to tell that accomplishment and use it to fuel my desire to be a writer. So I got to take that. I got to take that accomplishment and use it to fuel my desire to be a writer. Wow, that sounded like a nice chat with the guy. It was. Game of Thrones was unknown to the point that most people thought of it as a Game of Thrones books and not as a Song of Ice and Fire. Exactly. Omega, you took over a town with only tomahawks? Yeah, we launched an entire silo. I love the imagery of that. But yeah, luck absolutely plays a role in all of this. You can do everything right, and luck might just not be on your side. You can be the worst person ever, and luck might suddenly grace you with a wonderful opportunity. It's not fair. It's just the way the world is. Welcome to reality. Now, the last questions are these. What will you do? Are you ready to set the goals for completing your story? How will you keep yourself accountable for these goals? And last of all, share with us. here at Camille's Harem, your victories and your achievements. Please do so. Because again, it's all about that networking. It's all about getting yourself out there, having other people become champions for you as you champion your own work. Man. Yeah, so what am I going to do? Lady Luck is an equally cruel, ironic, and kind, and overall capricious mistress. Amen to that. Luck be a lady tonight. Don't go out with some other guy. Yeah, so we'll see where it goes. Let's see here, this year and next year. So I'm still going to be self-publishing a lot of my own stories, but I'm working on 3 different ideas. And I've got a 4th one that I'm going to work on probably later. Just not this year or next year, most likely. But I've got 3 different ideas that I'm going to try my luck again at getting picked up by a publishing agency. I've got my Beauty and the Beast story. I've got a secret project in the works. And and thanks actually to my dad. My dad helped to inspire me to write a story that I intend to actually introduce to you guys when we get to the month of Halloween, which I'm going to already tell you guys what the working title of it is. It's going to be called Filthy Lucre. They're like, wait, what the heck? Filthy Lucre. Yes, that is how you spell that word. Lucre is riches. And it's going to be a story based around toshers. People who back in the 1800s, their job, which was illegal, it was an illegal job that paid very well, would go dumpster diving in the sewers. So they would descend into the sewers and go searching for valuables and cash that got washed down by rainstorms. And so it was a very dangerous job for their health, obviously, but then also they dealt with all kinds of beasties down in the down there in the sewers. There was also potentially the possibility that others would try to maybe kill them for their riches because these guys annual, like the basic annual income for toshers going in and scrounging for treasures was like 4 to 10 times what a regular person earned each year. So they made good money, but it was very dangerous. And I have this really neat idea for a story of toshers going in as a group to get this fantastic treasure that's been washed down a drain. And it's going to be just the night from hell for these guys with some twists and turns along the way. Have you ever seen the movie Kung Fu Hustle? I'm planning on doing a Halloween story based off of this. Ooh, wait a second here. Let me... Kung Fu Hustle. Okay. Kung Fu Hustle, no. I have seen clips of Kung Fu Hustle. The moment I pulled something like, wait a second. I do know I've seen scenes of this. I've never watched the whole movie. Let's see here. I've watched all of Adventure in Little Chinatown. That's a very different story. Good money for dangerous work. It's a tale as old as time. It's not fancy work, but someone's got to do it. Well, in this case, it's not that someone has to do it. It's just that these people realize if I'm willing to risk life and limb and the cops, I can make good money. And so that's it. So that's what they do. Well, mainly the first major fight scene in the alley mixed in with Dark Stalkers. I have not seen that. I've not seen that part of the movie. I'm Omega because it's not immediately ringing any bells. But yeah, so I've got 3 different stories that I plan to be working on by the end of this year. So next year, I can start trying my luck again. Chances are it's probably not going to work out. I really need to somehow meet in person some publishers and some agents and just be all like in person, be like, please give me a chance. And we'll just see where we go from there. And that's why I said someone has got to do it that has this to be read as is bound to. Okay, I get it. But yeah, so I've got my own plans, my own goals for how I'm going to get the stories underway. Right now, working on one. I hope to be done with the first draft by the end of next month. By the end of October, I hope to be done with the first draft of Filthy Lucre. At the same time, getting one book ready for publishing towards the end of this year. We're also working on 3 others that I'm going to self-publish in the next 2 years. And so, yeah, I am busy. Holy crud, I am busy. And the thing is this, that you guys need to make sure that you have set your own goals. Begin with the end in mind, know what you want to do, have people hold you accountable to work. As Congraf said, you need to get, again, more into the habit of writing. By all means, yeah. And if you need reminders, I mean, we're here to help remind people, hey, it's time to do your daily writing. Get into the habit of doing even just a little bit. And it's amazing what it will do for you in the long run. All right. So with all that being said, wow, we've gone on for more than 3 hours. I feel my voice somewhat going. I need to get up. I need to stretch, go for a walk, and then get on to other projects and needs. But everyone, thank you so much for being here with me tonight, for accompanying me as I have published my 11th book. Woohoo! And for your input and how I should price it. Honestly, I thought that was really good stuff, and I'm very interested in seeing how in the long run that pricing plays out. Conquest says, this is all on top of the channel, and you also are part of a podcast. If I understand it, well, the podcast has now become the channel. It's no longer its own separate thing. So, yeah, it's just the channel. But, yeah, being top of being a writer must be tough. Yeah. And then I've got a part-time job. I take care of my niece throughout most of the week as well, or help to take care of her. So, yeah, it is a lot. But yeah, if I didn't do that, life would be incredibly boring. I'd have way too much time on my hands. Too much time on my hands. I wish I had too much time on my hands. Comcraft says, next time I hope to be able to talk about some stuff I noticed on Deltarune and things I've noticed from talks about it. Awesome. Well, Deltarune is also, here's another thing. Deltarune technically is urban fantasy, especially now as we've gotten into the further chapters of Deltarune. I at first originally just considered it portal fantasy because it absolutely is, but it's a portal fantasy that's now beginning to integrate urban fantasy elements into it. And I'm really excited to share with you guys my upcoming videos for Deltarune, one of which that I really need to sit down and just crank out the script for is whether or not Gerson actually did go to the Dark World before we did. And I personally believe that he did, and I've got the evidence for it. Then also, of course, do the reviews for chapters 3 and 4, the Cruzy video. I've been asked to do a video on Des and Azrael. I did not need to be asked for that because I already wanted to do that. So yeah. Oh, so much to talk about, so little time. Deltarune is technically an isekai, even as a pseudo-harem. It does. And just remember this, isekai is portal fantasy. So a Styx fan, are you? Yes, kind of. Here's the thing. As far as being a musical fan, like when people are like, so what do you listen to? I'm like, 2 Steps from Hell. I am so bad at remembering the names of songs and bands and the people in bands. So I just listen to whatever music I really like at the time. And yes, I've listened to Styx, Ungrateful Dead, Metallica, Bon Jovi, reggae stuff, techno, you name it. Omega, so how's No Evil so far? I'm Omega. I wish I could say that I've seen more, but literally, I have not had the time this week. Holy cow. It is actually surprising how I've not had the time. So like I had the next episode queued up, ready to go, and each time I'd be like, okay, I'm ready, and then something would happen, and I would have to move away. I've gotten so little done this week. So unfortunately, I haven't gotten much further than what I said last week. How do I like No Evil so far? It's good, and I'm impressed that it's just continued to go on. I'm interested to see how the story manages to make itself continue to go on even longer. One of the things that I have noticed with as far as I am in No Evil is that No Evil is in many ways like many manhwa. And now then, I should explain what I mean by this. So there's various tropes that manhwa uses that are very different from manga. Most manga stories adhere to certain archetypes, tropes, and plot types that the Japanese find very interesting. In manhwa, one of the big things that you see happen again and again and again is, so here's the side plot to help solve the side plot, which will advance the side plot that will eventually help to advance the plots. So we have 3 side plots that have to be done in particular order in order for the plot to take just one step forward. Where I'm currently at No Evil definitely feels like, okay, we've now reached the point where we have the subplot to the subplot to the subplot in order to move the characters just to the next side of this town, which can be a little bit frustrating. But one of the reasons why No Evil is able to pull it off is because No Evil is not bashing you over the head with 20-minute long episodes of subplots. And so its pacing allows it to remain mysterious and folksy and fun without it feeling tedious. And that's very important in order for this show to not feel like it's too much. So that's my observation as of right now. Comcast says, I mainly heard OSTs from AMVs I used to watch, followed by video games. Hope things go better with you. Hope you don't burn out. Yeah, I got to make sure I don't burn out either. Woo! And Congress says, I got to get around to looking up No Evil. Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's free to watch. Go ahead, give it a watch. All right. So, with all that being said, everyone, thank you so much again for being here tonight, for all of your interactions, for your thoughts, your questions, your insights, for your encouragement, everything. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you so much. So I wish you a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are at. And until the next video, y'all, I must bid thee tschüss.